Triangulation. Triangulation is a manipulative strategy where a narcissist introduces a third party into conflicts or relationships to create tension, jealousy, and insecurity. Rather than addressing an issue directly, they involve someone else, whether an ex, a friend, a coworker, or even a stranger, to shift the power dynamics in their favor and keep you off balance. The goal is to make you feel like you are in competition for their approval, forcing you into a state of emotional instability. In romantic relationships, triangulation often takes the form of constant comparisons. A narcissist might frequently mention how an ex never complained like you do, or how another person understands them better. This isn't done to inspire self-improvement. It's a calculated move to make you feel inadequate, uncertain, and desperate for their validation. The more you compete for their attention, the more control they have over you. Triangulation isn't limited to romantic relationships. In family settings, a manipulative parent may play siblings against each other, favoring one while subtly undermining the other to create rivalry and dependency. In the workplace, a toxic boss might pit employees against each other by spreading misinformation, ensuring that colleagues see each other as threats rather than forming alliances that could challenge their authority. This manipulation is effective because it taps into deep-seated insecurities. When you feel like you have to fight for a place in someone's life, your emotions become entangled in their web of control. Instead of recognizing their manipulation, you focus on competing with the third party, just as they intended. The best way to break free from triangulation is to refuse to play the game. If someone constantly brings others into conflicts, confront them directly. Don't allow them to dictate your self-worth based on false comparisons. A narcissist thrives on chaos and division. When you refuse to engage, you take away their power. Love bombing. Love bombing is an intense manipulation tactic where a narcissist overwhelms you with excessive affection, attention, and praise to gain control over you. At first, it feels like the most powerful and intoxicating love you've ever experienced. They shower you with compliments, grand gestures, deep conversations, and promises of an extraordinary future together. You feel special, chosen, and unlike anything they've ever known. But beneath this overwhelming adoration lies a calculated agenda to make you emotionally dependent on them before they slowly start to withdraw it. At the height of love bombing, everything feels perfect. They may flood your phone with texts, insist they've never felt this way about anyone before, and talk about a future together almost immediately. They might give extravagant gifts, constantly compliment you, and tell you that you are their soulmate. You may start believing that you found someone who truly understands and values you. But love bombing isn't about genuine love. It's about control. Once you are emotionally invested and completely drawn in, the shift begins. The grand gestures fade, the compliments slow down, and their attention becomes sporadic. Suddenly, you find yourself craving the validation they once gave freely. This is exactly where they want you, confused, addicted to the highs of their affection, and willing to do anything to get that love back. At this point, they start to manipulate, criticize, or emotionally withdraw, making you work harder to regain their approval. Love bombing creates an emotional roller coaster. When the love is given, it feels euphoric. When it's withheld, it feels devastating. The victim starts to believe that if they just behave a certain way, they will get back to that initial blissful stage. This illusion keeps them hooked in the cycle of abuse, making it nearly impossible to leave. Recognizing love bombing is crucial. Real love is consistent, steady, and does not rush intimacy or overwhelm you with unrealistic promises. If someone showers you with excessive attention too quickly, then suddenly pulls back, be cautious. Love should make you feel secure, not addicted. Gaslighting. Gaslighting is a psychological manipulation tactic designed to make you question your own reality, memories, and even your sanity. A narcissist employs this strategy by persistently denying things they've said or done, twisting facts, and making you feel like your emotions and perceptions are unreliable. Over time, this repeated distortion of truth erodes your confidence in your own mind, making you more dependent on them for a sense of reality. It often begins subtly, with small denials or contradictions that seem harmless. They might insist that something never happened, even when you have clear recollection of it. They may dismiss your concerns as overreactions, making you feel like you're too sensitive or irrational. As this pattern continues, you start second-guessing yourself, wondering if you are actually imagining things or being unreasonable. Eventually, you might reach a point where you apologize for things that weren't your fault, simply because you no longer trust your own judgment. Gaslighting is particularly insidious because it isolates you mentally and emotionally. The more you rely on the manipulator for clarity, the deeper their control becomes. Your reality is no longer shaped by your own experiences, but by their version of events. The goal is to make you so uncertain of yourself that you become easier to control, less likely to challenge them, and more willing to accept their authority over your thoughts and decisions. The only way to break free from gaslighting is to recognize it for what it is. Documenting conversations, trusting your instincts, and seeking external perspectives can help counteract its effects. Once you stop accepting their false version of reality and stand firm in your own experiences, the gaslighter's control over you begins to weaken. Their power lies in your self-doubt. When you reclaim your trust in yourself, they lose their grip. Silent treatment. The silent treatment is a form of emotional manipulation where a narcissist deliberately ignores you, withholds communication, or refuses to acknowledge your presence as a way to punish and control you. Unlike a healthy timeout in a disagreement, the silent treatment is intentional, cruel, and designed to make you feel powerless and desperate for their attention. At first, the sudden withdrawal of communication is jarring. One moment, everything seems fine. The next, they act as if you don't exist. They refuse to answer your calls, ignore your texts, and act indifferent to your presence. If you ask what's wrong, they give vague answers like, "You know what you did," or worse, they pretend nothing is happening at all. This calculated coldness is meant to instill anxiety and make you question yourself. The longer the silence lasts, the more distressing it becomes. You start replaying every interaction, wondering if you did something wrong. You may even start apologizing for things you didn't do just to make them talk to you again. This is exactly what they want, to make you feel so uncomfortable and emotionally starved that you become willing to do anything to restore peace. The silent treatment is a power move. It forces you into submission without them having to say a single word. The more you try to fix things, the more control they have. Eventually, when they do decide to acknowledge you again, it feels like a relief, reinforcing the cycle. You may even feel grateful that they are speaking to you, forgetting that they were the ones who caused the pain in the first place. Over time, the silent treatment wears down self-esteem and creates a toxic dynamic where one person is always walking on eggshells, afraid of triggering another episode of emotional withdrawal. It conditions the victim to suppress their own needs and feelings to avoid being abandoned. The best way to break free from the silent treatment is to stop chasing their approval. If someone refuses to communicate like an adult, respect yourself enough to walk away. Healthy relationships involve open dialogue and mutual respect, not emotional starvation. Projection. Projection is a psychological manipulation tactic where a narcissist accuses you of the very behaviors they themselves are guilty of. Instead of taking responsibility for their flaws, mistakes, or toxic actions, They shift the blame onto you, making it seem as though you are the one with the problem. This not only deflects accountability, but also keeps you on the defensive, constantly trying to prove that you are not what they claim you to be. A narcissist who lies frequently may accuse you of dishonesty. If they are cheating, they might start accusing you of being unfaithful. If they are manipulative, they'll tell you that you are the one trying to control them. This tactic is highly effective because it creates confusion. You may find yourself so busy defending yourself that you don't even realize what's happening. You've been trapped in a false narrative designed to keep the focus off of them. Projection works because it preys on your emotional investment in the relationship. If someone you care about falsely accuses you of something, your natural instinct is to defend yourself. But in doing so, you play right into their hands. The more you argue, the more they double down, using your reaction as further proof that their accusation is valid. Over time, this relentless psychological warfare can make you start questioning yourself, wondering if maybe, just maybe, there is some truth to what they are saying. The most dangerous aspect of projection is that it can distort your sense of reality. When you constantly hear accusations that don't match your actions, it can make you feel like you need to prove your innocence, when in reality, you were never guilty to begin with. The real purpose of projection is to shift focus away from the narcissist's actions and onto you, making sure you are too distracted, defending yourself to notice their own wrongdoing. The best way to counter projection is to stop engaging. When someone accuses you of something you know isn't true, don't waste time proving yourself. Instead, recognize that their words are actually revealing their behaviors. Once you see the pattern, it becomes easier to detach from their false accusations and refuse to be pulled into their game. Blame shifting. Blame shifting is a manipulation tactic where a narcissist deflects responsibility for their actions by placing the blame entirely on you. No matter what happens, it is always your fault. Whether they made a mistake, hurt you, or acted out of line, they will twist the situation until you are the one left apologizing. Their goal is simple: to avoid accountability while making you feel guilty and responsible for their behavior. At first, blame shifting may seem subtle. If they forgot something important, they'll say, "Well, you never reminded me." If they lash out, they'll claim, "You made me do it." If they break a promise, they'll insist, "You're the one being unreasonable." Over time, this constant reversal of blame creates a toxic cycle where you start assuming that everything going wrong is somehow your fault. One of the most damaging aspects of blame shifting is that it makes you question your own reality. You may start believing that you are the problem, that if you could just be better, communicate differently, or do more, the relationship would improve. But no matter what you change, the blame will always fall back on you because that's the entire point. It's not about fixing problems. It's about avoiding them altogether. Blame shifting is particularly effective when combined with guilt tripping. The narcissist may say things like, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me?" Or, "You're making me out to be the bad guy when I was just trying to help." These statements are meant to make you feel guilty for even questioning them, further reinforcing their control. Over time, this toxic dynamic can leave you feeling emotionally exhausted, constantly walking on eggshells to avoid triggering another round of blame. You may become hesitant to voice concerns, fearing that any attempt to hold them accountable will somehow backfire on you. The best way to break free from blame shifting is to recognize the pattern and refuse to accept responsibility for things that are not your fault. A healthy person takes ownership of their actions. A narcissist never will. Instead of falling into the trap of endless explanations and apologies, step back and remind yourself that their inability to accept blame is their issue, not yours. Guilt tripping. Guilt tripping is a powerful manipulation tactic where a narcissist uses guilt to control your emotions, decisions, and behavior. They twist situations to make you feel like you owe them something, even when you've done nothing wrong. Their goal is simple: to make you feel bad enough that you comply with their demands, tolerate their mistreatment, or put their needs ahead of your own. It often starts subtly. You might express a personal boundary, and instead of respecting it, they respond with, "Wow, after everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me." Or if you don't immediately do what they want, they say, "I guess I just don't matter to you anymore." These statements aren't direct orders, but they are loaded with emotional pressure designed to make you feel selfish, ungrateful, or even cruel. Guilt tripping is especially effective because it plays on your sense of empathy and responsibility. If you are a caring person, hearing that you've hurt someone, whether intentionally or not, can be painful. The narcissist exploits this by making you feel as if you've wronged them, even when you haven't. Instead of questioning their behavior, you end up questioning yourself, wondering if maybe you should have done more, given more, or been more accommodating. This tactic is often used to override your boundaries. If you say no to something unreasonable, they don't argue logically. Instead, they make you feel bad for even thinking about saying no. They might bring up past favors they did for you, exaggerate how much they've sacrificed, or even guilt trip you over their own bad choices. For example, if they make a poor financial decision, they might say, "If you really cared, you'd help me out." Even though their problem is self-inflicted, they find a way to make it your responsibility. The best way to counter guilt tripping is to recognize it for what it is. When someone constantly tries to make you feel bad for setting boundaries or making choices that are best for you, remind yourself that guilt is not a debt. Healthy relationships are based on mutual respect, not emotional blackmail. If someone truly cares about you, they won't try to control you through guilt. Victim playing. Victim playing is a manipulative strategy where a narcissist pretends to be the helpless, wounded party to gain sympathy, avoid blame, or excuse their toxic behavior. Instead of taking responsibility for their actions, they reframe every situation so that they appear to be the one who has been wronged, even when they are the cause of the problem. This tactic is designed to shift the focus away from their bad behavior and onto their supposed suffering. If you call them out for something they did, instead of addressing the issue, they might say, "I can't believe you would accuse me of that. Do you know how hard my life has been?" If you express frustration over how they treat you, they'll respond with, "You have no idea how much I do for you, and this is the thanks I get?" Suddenly, instead of talking about their mistreatment of you, you're being pressured to comfort them. Victim playing often goes hand in hand with guilt tripping. A narcissist will exaggerate or even fabricate hardships to gain sympathy and shift responsibility. If they're caught lying, they might deflect with a sob story about how they had to lie because no one understands them. If they mistreat others, they'll blame their past traumas, insisting that they can't help their actions because of how much they've suffered. While past pain is real for many people, a narcissist weaponizes it, not to heal, but to manipulate. This tactic is especially dangerous because it creates a distorted dynamic where the victim feels guilty for holding the narcissist accountable. Instead of addressing real problems, you may find yourself comforting them, making excuses for them, or even apologizing to them, even when they were the ones who hurt you. Over time, this makes it nearly impossible to challenge them, because every confrontation turns into an emotional trap where they emerge as the misunderstood victim. The best way to counter victim playing is to stay focused on the facts. Acknowledge their emotions if they seem genuine, but don't let their pity-seeking derail the conversation. If they avoid accountability by making everything about their pain, remind yourself, their suffering does not excuse mistreatment. Everyone has hardships, but real victims seek healing, not control. Hoovering. Hoovering is a manipulative tactic narcissists use to suck you back into their control after you've pulled away, set boundaries, or tried to leave the relationship. Just like a vacuum cleaner pulling in debris, they attempt to suck you back into their toxic cycle using guilt, nostalgia, fake apologies, or sudden dramatic gestures. The purpose of hoovering is not to repair the relationship or acknowledge past mistakes, it's simply to regain control over you. At first, a narcissist may disappear, giving you the space you initially craved. But once they sense that you are truly moving on, they reappear with calculated moves. You might receive unexpected messages like, "I've been thinking about you a lot. I miss you," or "I've realized I made so many mistakes, and I'm ready to change." If emotional appeals don't work, they might escalate to guilt tripping. "After everything we've been through, how could you walk away like this?" They may even fabricate emergencies, claiming they are in distress, sick, or struggling with mental health, all in an attempt to get your sympathy and bring you back under their influence. What makes hoovering so effective is that it preys on emotional vulnerability. If you still care about them, the sudden warmth and regret they express can reignite old feelings. If you have a strong sense of empathy, their pleas for help or redemption can trigger a desire to give them another chance. But this cycle is always the same. Once they regain your trust, their toxic behaviors return, often worse than before. A narcissist does not hoover because they love or miss you. They do it because they need control. When they feel you slipping away, they panic, not out of genuine care, but because they are losing their source of validation and emotional supply. The more you pull away, the more aggressive their hoovering attempts become. They may even shift from kindness to threats, saying things like, "You'll never find someone who loves you like I do," or "You're making a huge mistake. You'll regret this." This emotional whiplash keeps you confused and unsure, which is exactly where they want you. Breaking free from hoovering requires recognizing it for what it is: manipulation wrapped in false remorse. No matter how convincing their words or how desperate their pleas, remind yourself why you left in the first place. Real change is demonstrated through consistent actions, not momentary performances of regret. The best response to hoovering is firm boundaries and, if possible, no contact. A narcissist cannot manipulate someone who refuses to engage. Stonewalling. Stonewalling is a form of psychological manipulation where a narcissist deliberately refuses to engage in conversation, acknowledge your presence, or provide any form of communication to control and frustrate you. Unlike a healthy break during a heated discussion, stonewalling is not about cooling down or finding clarity. It is a deliberate act of emotional withdrawal meant to make you feel insignificant, powerless, and desperate for their attention. At first, the sudden silence might be confusing. One moment, you're having a conversation, and the next, they refuse to respond. They may ignore your texts, walk away mid-discussion, or act as if you don't exist. If you push for an answer, they respond with vague dismissals like, "I don't want to talk about this," or worse, "You're overreacting." The more you try to get them to engage, the more they pull away, making you feel like you are talking to a wall. Stonewalling works because it plays on the basic human need for communication and connection. When someone deliberately withholds that from you, it triggers anxiety, confusion, and emotional distress. You start replaying every interaction, wondering what you did wrong. You may feel compelled to apologize, even when you have nothing to apologize for, just to get them to speak to you again. This is exactly what they want. The goal of stonewalling is to make you feel responsible for their silence, forcing you to work harder to regain their approval. Over time, stonewalling can wear down your self-esteem. You start walking on eggshells, afraid that any disagreement or emotional expression will be met with another round of silent punishment. You may suppress your thoughts and feelings to avoid triggering their withdrawal. This creates a toxic cycle where communication becomes a one-sided effort. You give, they withhold, and you're left feeling exhausted and emotionally depleted. One of the most dangerous aspects of stonewalling is that it conditions you to accept neglect as a normal response to conflict. A healthy person in a healthy relationship talks through issues and finds solutions. A narcissist, however, uses silence as a weapon, making resolution impossible while keeping you emotionally dependent on them for validation. The best way to counter stonewalling is to recognize it as a manipulation tactic and refuse to chase after their attention. If someone continuously ignores you instead of communicating, it is a red flag of emotional abuse. No relationship should involve silence as a form of punishment. Instead of desperately trying to get them to talk, take a step back and regain control of your own emotions. A person who truly respects you will communicate, not use silence to control you. Minimization. Minimization is a manipulation tactic used by narcissists to downplay your concerns, emotions, or experiences, making you feel like you're overreacting or being irrational. The goal is to make you doubt yourself, suppress your feelings, and ultimately accept their version of reality. It's a subtle yet deeply damaging way to invalidate your emotions and keep you from standing up for yourself. At first, minimization can seem harmless, even casual. You express frustration over something they did, and they respond with, "It's not a big deal," or "You're making a mountain out of a molehill." If you're hurt by their words or actions, they might say, "You're too sensitive," or "I was just joking." These statements don't outright deny what happened, but they make you feel like your emotions are excessive or unwarranted. Over time, this constant belittling of your feelings conditions you to second-guess yourself. You start wondering, am I really overreacting? Or maybe I'm too sensitive. Instead of holding them accountable, you begin to shrink yourself, making excuses for their behavior and ignoring your own needs. This is exactly what they want, to keep you in a position where you don't challenge them or expect too much. Minimization also shows up in more serious situations. If you express concern about their toxic behavior, they might say things like, "Every couple argues," or "You're acting like I abused you," or something. If you try to set boundaries, they'll dismiss it as unnecessary, saying things like, "You're being dramatic," or "You always take things so personally." These responses are meant to make you feel unreasonable, making it easier for them to continue mistreating you without facing consequences. What makes minimization so dangerous is that it gradually erodes your confidence in your own emotions. You stop trusting your instincts because every time you bring up a concern, it's immediately dismissed as an overreaction. This can lead to emotional numbness, where you no longer express your needs out of fear that they will be invalidated. The best way to counter minimization is to stand firm in your emotions. If someone consistently downplays your concerns, recognize that their reaction is not a reflection of reality. It's a manipulation strategy. Your feelings are valid, and a healthy person will acknowledge and respect them, not dismiss them. If someone refuses to take your emotions seriously, they are showing you that they don't respect you, and a relationship without respect is not one worth maintaining. Word salad. Word salad is a chaotic communication tactic used by narcissists to confuse, exhaust, and manipulate you. Instead of engaging in clear, logical conversation, they speak in a convoluted, circular, or nonsensical manner that makes it nearly impossible to reach any resolution. The purpose of word salad is not to communicate. It's to mentally wear you down, frustrate you, and make you feel like you are the problem. At first, a conversation with a narcissist might seem normal. You try to address an issue or seek clarity, but as soon as you press for an answer, they begin twisting their words, changing topics, contradicting themselves, and throwing in unrelated details. They might jump from one subject to another, make vague or cryptic statements, or respond with questions instead of answers. No matter how hard you try to follow their train of thought, you end up feeling lost, confused, and emotionally drained. A typical word salad exchange might look like this. You. Why did you lie about where you were last night? Them. Lie? You always assume the worst. Why do you always bring up the past? This is why I can't talk to you about anything. And what about last week when you didn't answer my call right away? Are you hiding something from me? Notice what happened? Instead of answering the question, they deflect, accuse, and introduce irrelevant topics. By the end of the conversation, you're no closer to the truth, and you may even find yourself defending your own actions, despite the fact that they were the one in the wrong. Word salad works because it keeps you in a constant state of mental exhaustion. You spend so much energy trying to decode their nonsense that you forget what you were arguing about in the first place. This tactic also allows them to avoid responsibility, as they never actually answer for their behavior. They just create enough chaos to make you give up. Another common trick within word salad is shifting definitions. If you accuse them of being rude, they might say, "Define rude." If you call them out on their dishonesty, they might respond with, "Well, what exactly do you mean by lying?" This type of circular, pointless debate is meant to frustrate you to the point of emotional exhaustion. Over time, exposure to word salad can lead to mental fog and self-doubt. You may start feeling like you are the problem, that you just don't understand them properly, or that you are incapable of having a normal conversation. In reality, the issue is not your inability to communicate. It's their deliberate attempt to keep you disoriented. The best way to deal with word salad is to refuse to engage. If a conversation starts becoming a confusing mess, recognize that it is intentional. Stop chasing clarity from someone who thrives on confusion. Instead, set firm boundaries. If they refuse to communicate clearly, walk away from the discussion. A healthy person will engage in direct, honest dialogue, while a manipulator will always try to keep you lost in their verbal maze. Future faking. Future faking is a deceptive manipulation tactic where a narcissist makes grand promises about the future that they have no real intention of keeping. They paint an enticing picture of what's to come: marriage, vacations, career opportunities, or personal change, to keep you emotionally invested. The goal isn't to build a future with you, it's to keep you hooked in the present. At first, future faking can feel incredibly intoxicating. The narcissist tells you exactly what you want to hear. They might say things like, "I can't wait to marry you," or "Next year, we'll move in together and start our dream life." If you express concerns about their behavior, they promise, "I'll change. Just give me time." These words are designed to make you stay, tolerate mistreatment, and overlook red flags because you believe a better future is just around the corner. Future faking works because it preys on hope. If you truly love someone, you want to believe in their potential. You want to trust that their promises are genuine and that things will improve. But narcissists don't view the future as something to plan for. They use it as a tool to control you in the present. Their promises create an illusion of progress, even when nothing changes. One of the most painful aspects of future faking is that it often delays your own personal growth. Instead of making decisions based on reality, you stay stuck in a fantasy. You wait for the life they promised rather than creating one for yourself. Time passes, and eventually you realize that none of the things they promised ever happened. But by the time you see the truth, they've likely already moved the goalpost, making new promises to keep you from walking away. The way to break free from future faking is to focus on actions, not words. If someone constantly makes promises but never follows through, stop believing in their potential and start accepting their reality. A healthy person doesn't make empty commitments. They take real steps toward a shared future. If all you have are words with no evidence of action, recognize that you are being strung along. The best response? Stop waiting for a future that will never come and start building one on your own terms. Mirroring. Mirroring is a psychological manipulation technique where a narcissist copies your personality, interests, values, and even speech patterns to create a false sense of connection and trust. In the early stages of a relationship, whether romantic, platonic, or professional, they reflect back everything you admire, making you believe that you found someone who truly understands and compliments you. But mirroring isn't about genuine compatibility. It's a calculated strategy to win you over before the mask eventually slips. At first, mirroring feels like instant chemistry. You mention your favorite music, and suddenly, it's theirs too. You talk about your dreams, and they claim to have the exact same aspirations. Your hobbies, humor, and mannerisms, they seem to share them all. It feels like fate, like you've met your perfect match. But what's really happening is that they are carefully observing you and adjusting their personality to fit yours, making it easier to gain your trust and admiration. Mirroring works because it accelerates emotional bonding. When you see yourself reflected in someone else, you instinctively feel connected to them. You assume that because you have so much in common, they must be safe, trustworthy, and meant to be in your life. This creates a deep emotional attachment before you have the chance to recognize their true nature. However, once they have secured your trust, the mirroring stops. The person who once seemed perfect for you suddenly starts showing behaviors that don't align with what they originally presented. The things they once claimed to love are now irrelevant to them. Their values shift, their personality changes. You begin to feel like you never really knew them at all, because you didn't. They were never that person to begin with. Mirroring is particularly dangerous because it creates a false sense of security. When the narcissist finally reveals their true self, often through manipulation, control, or cruelty, you struggle to reconcile it with the version of them you originally met. This cognitive dissonance makes it difficult to walk away because you keep hoping they'll return to being the person they once were. But that person never existed. It was just a reflection of you. The best way to protect yourself from mirroring is to take your time before deeply investing in a relationship. Pay attention to whether someone's interests and values remain consistent over time rather than shifting to match yours. A genuine connection is built on real compatibility, not an imitation of your personality. If someone seems too perfect, too aligned with everything you love, be cautious. Mirroring is a manipulation tool, not a sign of true connection. Baiting. Baiting is a psychological manipulation tactic where a narcissist deliberately provokes you to react emotionally so they can play the victim, shift blame, or justify their own toxic behavior. They push your buttons, knowing exactly what will trigger you, and as soon as you react, they use your response against you. This tactic is designed to make you look like the unstable one while they maintain the image of being calm, reasonable, and innocent. Baiting can take many forms. The narcissist might say something cruel, knowing it will hurt you, and then when you react, they accuse you of being too sensitive or dramatic. They may bring up past traumas or insecurities just to get a reaction out of you, then sit back and watch as you struggle to defend yourself. In some cases, they intentionally provoke an argument so they can later blame you for the conflict, saying things like, "See? This is why I don't talk to you. You always start fights." A classic example of baiting is when they make subtle insults or backhanded comments, then act as if they were harmless. If you confront them, they'll say, "Relax, I was just joking." Another form of baiting is intentionally withholding something they know you need, affection, attention, or communication, until you become frustrated. The moment you express your anger, they flip the script and say, "Why are you always attacking me? You're so negative." The key to baiting is that they want a reaction. Your emotional response gives them the ammunition they need to justify mistreating you or to paint themselves as the victim. The more you react, the more they feel in control. This is especially common in abusive relationships, where the narcissist tries to make you look irrational or overly emotional to discredit you in front of others. The best way to deal with baiting is to refuse to take the bait. When they try to provoke you, remain calm and detached. Responding with indifference removes their power. If they can't get a reaction out of you, their manipulation fails. Recognizing baiting for what it is, a trap, allows you to disengage before they can turn the situation against you. Financial control. Financial control is a form of manipulation where a narcissist uses money to dominate, restrict, and keep you dependent on them. By controlling access to finances, they create a situation where you feel trapped, unable to leave, and powerless to make your own decisions. This tactic is often used in romantic relationships, family dynamics, and even workplace environments where a manipulative boss or partner exerts control through economic means. In romantic relationships, financial control often starts subtly. A narcissist may insist on managing the finances, claiming that they're just better with money or that it's easier this way. Over time, they take complete control, restricting access to accounts, monitoring your spending, or even giving you an allowance. If you ever question their financial decisions, they may shame you, saying things like, "You wouldn't understand how money works," or "You'd just waste it." Another way narcissists exert financial control is by sabotaging your ability to earn your own money. They might discourage you from working, saying, "You don't need to work, I'll take care of everything," only to later use that dependence against you. If you try to find a job, they may create obstacles, criticizing your career choices, causing conflicts before important meetings, or even outright forbidding you from working. If you're already employed, they might undermine your career by causing drama at your workplace or insisting that you quit because your job is ruining our relationship. In some cases, a financially abusive narcissist will take on debt in your name, make large purchases without consulting you, or refuse to contribute to shared expenses while demanding that you cover everything. They may even use financial threats, such as saying, "If you leave me, you'll have nothing," or refusing to provide for children unless you comply with their demands. The effects of financial control can be devastating. It can leave you feeling powerless, stuck in a relationship or situation you desperately want to escape, but financially cannot. Many victims of financial abuse stay because they fear they won't be able to survive on their own. The narcissist thrives on this dependence, knowing that without financial independence, you are less likely to leave. The best way to protect yourself from financial control is to maintain independence over your own money. Even in committed relationships, it's crucial to have access to your own financial resources. Keep separate accounts, build savings, and be aware of where your money is going. If you are already in a situation where financial control is being used against you, seek help from trusted friends, legal professionals, or financial advisors who can assist you in regaining control over your own economic stability. Money should never be a tool of control in a healthy relationship. If someone uses finances to manipulate, restrict, or threaten you, it's a red flag that they are more interested in power than partnership. Flying monkeys. Flying monkeys are people a narcissist uses to spy, manipulate, or attack on their behalf. Instead of confronting you directly, they send others, friends, family members, co-workers, or mutual acquaintances, to do their dirty work. The goal of using flying monkeys is to keep control over you while maintaining a safe distance, making it appear as though they are uninvolved. Flying monkeys can play different roles. Some act as spies, gathering information about you and reporting back to the narcissist. They might casually ask about your life, relationships, or emotions, pretending to care while secretly feeding everything you say back to the manipulator. Others act as enforcers, trying to pressure or guilt you into doing what the narcissist wants. They might say things like, "You know, they really miss you," or "Maybe you're being too hard on them." Their words are meant to break down your defenses and make you reconsider your boundaries. In more extreme cases, flying monkeys become direct attackers. They spread rumors, insult you, or even try to intimidate you on behalf of the narcissist. They may bombard you with messages, criticize your choices, or attempt to isolate you from others by turning people against you. Narcissists love using flying monkeys for this because it allows them to stay in the shadows while their team does the damage. If you try to confront them, they can simply deny involvement, saying, "I never told them to do that," or "I can't control what other people say." Flying monkeys are often unaware they are being used. They may genuinely believe the narcissist's version of events, having been fed a carefully crafted sob story. The narcissist might play the victim, claiming you've wronged them, manipulated them, or abandoned them, making others feel compelled to intervene on their behalf. These individuals may not have malicious intentions, but their involvement makes your situation even harder to navigate. The best way to deal with flying monkeys is to set firm boundaries. Do not engage in debates, defend yourself excessively, or try to explain your side to them. They are not neutral. If someone repeatedly brings messages from the narcissist or tries to pressure you into reconciliation, distance yourself from them as well. True friends and allies will respect your boundaries, not act as messengers for a manipulator. Intermittent reinforcement. Intermittent reinforcement is a psychological manipulation technique where a narcissist gives sporadic affection, approval, or rewards to keep you emotionally hooked. Instead of providing consistent love or validation, they alternate between warmth and coldness, making you crave their attention even more. This tactic creates a powerful cycle of addiction, similar to what happens in gambling. The unpredictability of the reward makes you work harder for it. At first, the narcissist showers you with love, attention, and admiration. This is the hook phase, where they make you feel special and deeply valued. But just when you feel secure, they withdraw. They become distant, critical, or even cruel. Confused, you try to get back to the version of them who once treated you so well. Just when you're about to give up, they give you a small dose of affection, maybe a compliment, an apology, or a good day together. This tiny moment of kindness makes you feel relieved and hopeful, and you hold on to it, believing things are getting better. But then, the cycle repeats. They pull away again, leaving you anxious and desperate for their next moment of approval. You start to internalize the idea that if you just do the right thing, if you just prove yourself enough, they will go back to being that wonderful person they once were. This keeps you stuck, constantly chasing their love, even when the bad days far outweigh the good. Intermittent reinforcement works because it manipulates the brain's reward system. Studies have shown that unpredictable rewards create stronger emotional attachments than consistent ones. The narcissist exploits this, keeping you emotionally dependent on them by making their affection feel like a rare and valuable prize. The more inconsistent they are, the harder you work to win their approval. This tactic is commonly used in toxic romantic relationships, but it also appears in friendships, family dynamics, and workplaces. A manipulative boss might praise you one day and belittle you the next, making you feel like you have to prove your worth constantly. A narcissistic parent might be affectionate in one moment and distant in another, leaving you always striving for their approval. The only way to break free from intermittent reinforcement is to recognize the pattern and step back emotionally. Instead of focusing on the occasional moments of kindness, look at the overall trend of the relationship. If someone only treats you well in unpredictable, sporadic bursts while making you suffer in between, that is manipulation, not love. Healthy relationships provide consistent support and respect, not emotional highs and lows designed to keep you addicted. Emotional withholding. Emotional withholding is a manipulation tactic where a narcissist deliberately refuses to show love, affection, or validation to control you. By depriving you of emotional warmth, they create a sense of lack, making you desperate to earn their approval. This tactic is one of the most insidious forms of emotional abuse because it plays on your natural need for connection and intimacy while keeping you in a state of psychological starvation. At first, the narcissist may appear loving, affectionate, and deeply invested in you. They give you attention, make you feel special, and create a bond that seems unbreakable. But once they feel secure in their control, they begin to withdraw. Compliments disappear, affection fades, and they suddenly seem distant or indifferent. When you try to address it, they dismiss your concerns, act as if nothing is wrong, or even blame you for their coldness. This form of silent punishment is intentional. They want you to feel rejected and insecure so that you will work harder to please them. The more they withhold, the more desperate you become, trying to earn back their love through compliance, self-sacrifice, or lowering your boundaries. You start to believe that if you just say the right thing, behave the right way, or meet their expectations perfectly, they will return to being the affectionate person they once were. Emotional withholding doesn't just affect romantic relationships, it can occur in family dynamics, friendships, and workplaces as well. A parent might withhold praise or affection to manipulate their child into meeting impossible standards. A boss may ignore an employee's achievements to keep them constantly striving for validation. A friend might suddenly withdraw support as a way to control the relationship dynamic. The effects of emotional withholding are devastating. It can lead to low self-esteem, feelings of unworthiness, and emotional dependence on the manipulator. Over time, you may start questioning your value and blaming yourself for their cold behavior. You may even develop an anxious attachment, craving their validation while fearing their rejection. The best way to counter emotional withholding is to recognize that love and validation should not be something you have to beg for. If someone consistently withholds affection or praise to make you feel inadequate, they are manipulating you. Healthy relationships involve mutual care and consistent emotional support, not cycles of giving and withdrawing love. Instead of chasing their approval, shift your focus towards self-validation and relationships where love is freely given, not rationed as a tool for control. Pathological lying. Pathological lying is a manipulation tactic where a narcissist lies constantly, even when unnecessary, to maintain control over situations and people. Unlike occasional dishonesty, which most people are guilty of at times, pathological lying is compulsive, calculated, and often completely detached from reality. The goal isn't just to avoid consequences, it's to confuse, manipulate, and keep others off balance. A narcissist lies for many reasons: to appear superior, to control a narrative, to avoid accountability, or simply to test how much they can get away with. Sometimes their lies are big and dramatic, claims of grand success, victimhood, or achievements that never happened. Other times they are small and subtle, twisting facts, denying events, or even lying about things that don't seem to matter at all. Over time, these constant fabrications create a world where nothing they say can be trusted. One of the most damaging aspects of pathological lying is its ability to distort reality. If you catch them in a lie, they will often deny it outright, even when faced with undeniable proof. If they can't deny it, they will twist the truth, blame someone else, or accuse you of being paranoid. This gaslighting effect makes you question your own memory and perception, leaving you unsure of what is real and what isn't. Pathological liars also use lies to control relationships. They may create fake stories to make you feel sorry for them, painting themselves as victims to gain sympathy. They might lie about other people, claiming that someone said something hurtful about you, to turn you against others and keep you isolated. They may even fabricate emergencies or threats to manipulate you into staying with them. Another layer of pathological lying is that the narcissist often believes their own lies. They repeat them so frequently that they become part of their own twisted version of reality. This makes confronting them almost impossible because in their mind, they are always right and you are always wrong for questioning them. The best way to deal with a pathological liar is to stop trying to get the truth out of them. Once you recognize that honesty is not part of their character, stop wasting energy trying to prove their lies. If someone consistently distorts reality, gaslights you, or refuses to take responsibility for the truth, distance yourself. Trust should be earned through actions, not just words, and someone who lies habitually is showing you they do not deserve that trust. Deliberate forgetfulness. Deliberate forgetfulness is a manipulation tactic where a narcissist pretends to forget things that are important to you as a way to exert control, invalidate your feelings, and frustrate you into submission. This is not simple absent-mindedness. It is a calculated move to make you feel insignificant, powerless, and emotionally drained. By forgetting key details, they rewrite reality in a way that suits their agenda, leaving you questioning whether your needs and expectations are even reasonable. At first, it might seem harmless. They forget a date night, a birthday, or a conversation about something that matters to you, but when this becomes a pattern, it's no longer a mistake, it's manipulation. When you remind them, they may act surprised, saying things like, "I don't remember you ever telling me that," or, "Are you sure you mentioned it? I would have remembered." This tactic makes you second-guess yourself, leading you to wonder if maybe you are the one being unreasonable. The real purpose behind deliberate forgetfulness is to wear you down. When someone repeatedly forgets things that are important to you, whether it's commitments, agreements, or even personal details, you begin to feel like your needs don't matter. Over time, you may stop asking for things altogether, conditioning yourself to expect disappointment. This is exactly what they want. In more toxic scenarios, they use this tactic to dodge accountability. If you bring up a past promise or a hurtful comment they made, they'll say, "I have no idea what you're talking about," or "That never happened." This type of gaslighting makes you doubt your own reality and prevents you from holding them accountable for their actions. Deliberate forgetfulness can also be used as a form of punishment. If you set boundaries or challenge their behavior, they might suddenly forget things that are important to you as a way to retaliate. They'll conveniently forget to do favors, show up late, or fail to follow through on commitments, subtly punishing you for standing up to them. The best way to deal with deliberate forgetfulness is to document important conversations and agreements. Keep records, send reminders in writing, and set clear expectations. Most importantly, recognize the difference between occasional forgetfulness and a pattern of manipulation. If someone consistently forgets things that matter to you but remembers everything that benefits them, it's time to reevaluate their intentions. Boundary testing. Boundary testing is a manipulation strategy where a narcissist constantly pushes or violates your boundaries in small ways to see how much they can get away with. They don't always bulldoze your limits outright, at least not at first. Instead, they chip away at them gradually, wearing you down until you start questioning whether your boundaries were ever reasonable in the first place. This tactic is particularly insidious because it happens so subtly that you may not even realize it's happening. A narcissist will start with something small, interrupting you when you're speaking, dismissing your requests, or making a joke at your expense. If you let it slide, they push further. Maybe they invade your personal space, pressure you into doing something you're uncomfortable with, or disregard your need for alone time. If you resist, they act as if you're overreacting, saying things like, "Relax, it's not a big deal," or "You're being too sensitive." Over time, this repeated boundary testing has a cumulative effect. You begin to doubt your own instincts. You wonder if maybe your boundaries are too strict, or if you're being unfair. This is exactly what they want. The more you let go of your limits, the more control they gain. Eventually, you may find yourself tolerating things you once swore you never would, accepting disrespect, allowing manipulation, or even excusing outright abuse. One of the most common places you'll see boundary testing is in relationships. A narcissist might ignore your requests for space, cross emotional or physical boundaries, or pressure you into things you're not comfortable with. In friendships, they might demand more time and energy than you're willing to give, making you feel guilty for setting limits. In workplaces, a toxic boss might accidentally overstep professional boundaries, constantly asking for extra work or invading your personal time. The key to stopping boundary testing is enforcement. It's not enough to just set boundaries. You have to uphold them. Narcissists thrive on testing limits, so if you give in even once, they see it as permission to push further. When they try to wear you down, stand firm. If they dismiss your boundaries, remind them clearly, "I've already told you I won't accept that." If they continue to push, distance yourself. A person who does not respect your limits does not respect you. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about protecting yourself. And if someone constantly challenges them, they are showing you that they don't have your best interests at heart. The strongest response? Stop explaining, stop justifying, and stop engaging in negotiations. A narcissist will always test boundaries, but they cannot cross the ones you refuse to lower. Fear-mongering. Fear-mongering is a psychological manipulation tactic where a narcissist instills fear in you to control your thoughts, actions, and decisions. Instead of using logic, respect, or healthy communication, they weaponize fear, whether real or imagined, to make you compliant, anxious, and dependent on them. This method keeps you from questioning their authority, setting boundaries, or leaving the relationship because you are too afraid of the consequences. Fear-mongering can take many forms. In romantic relationships, a narcissist might say things like, "If you leave me, no one else will ever love you," or "You'll regret walking away from this." They paint a grim picture of your future without them, making you feel like staying, even in a toxic situation, is the safer option. They may also warn you about how cruel and unforgiving the world is, convincing you that you need them to navigate life's dangers. In families, narcissistic parents might use fear to keep children obedient. They might say, "If you don't do what I say, I'll cut you off," or "You'll fail without my support." This creates a deep-seated fear of abandonment or failure, making it harder for their victims to break free from the control. In workplaces, a manipulative boss may use job security as leverage, saying things like, "If you don't do this extra work, don't be surprised if you're let go," or "People who go against me don't last long here." The fear of financial insecurity keeps employees trapped in toxic environments, afraid to advocate for themselves or seek better opportunities. A particularly cruel form of fear-mongering is when narcissists fabricate crises. They might claim to have powerful connections that could ruin your reputation, threaten self-harm if you don't comply, or suggest that harm will come to you if you don't follow their rules. By making you feel like danger is just around the corner, they create a psychological cage that keeps you in their grip. The best way to counter fear-mongering is to recognize when fear is being used as a tool of control rather than a genuine concern for your well-being. Ask yourself, is this person presenting solutions, or are they just trying to make me afraid? Fear should never be the foundation of a relationship, decision, or obligation. If someone is using fear to manipulate you, their concern is not your safety. It's their control over you. The strongest defense? Stop letting fear-based threats dictate your choices and start making decisions based on facts, not intimidation. Discrediting. Discrediting is a toxic manipulation tactic where a narcissist deliberately undermines your credibility in front of others. They spread misinformation, twist the truth, and cast doubt on your character, making it difficult for people to trust, believe, or support you. The goal is to isolate you, weaken your influence, and ensure that if you ever expose their behavior, no one will take you seriously. Discrediting often starts subtly. A narcissist might casually mention to others that you've been really emotional lately, or sometimes you exaggerate things. These small statements plant the idea that you are unreliable or overly dramatic. Over time, they escalate their tactics, portraying you as irrational, untrustworthy, or even unstable. A common method of discrediting is spreading lies or half-truths. They may tell your mutual friends that you've been saying negative things about them, causing those friends to turn against you. They might twist private conversations to make it seem like you are the problem. If you try to stand up for yourself, they'll say things like, "See? This is exactly what I was talking about." They're always overreacting. In professional settings, a narcissist may sabotage your reputation by questioning your competence. They might say things like, "I'm really concerned about their work performance," or "I don't know if they can handle this responsibility." These subtle jabs cause others to doubt your abilities, making it easier for the narcissist to maintain control and take credit for your work. Discrediting is especially dangerous in personal relationships because it isolates you. If they convince others that you are unreliable, no one will believe you when you finally expose their abuse. Worse, if you start doubting your own credibility, you may begin questioning whether your own experiences were real, falling deeper into their psychological trap. The best way to combat discrediting is to stay calm and let your actions speak louder than their words. Trying to argue against a narcissist's smear campaign often backfires because they've already framed you as unstable or vindictive. Instead, maintain consistency in your behavior and trust that the truth will reveal itself over time. Surround yourself with people who genuinely know and respect you, and don't waste energy trying to change the minds of those who have been poisoned by the narcissist's lies. If someone is trying to discredit you, remember, their need to destroy your reputation is a sign of their own insecurity, not your worth. The more confident you remain in your truth, the weaker their manipulation becomes. Shaming. Shaming is a manipulation tactic where a narcissist deliberately makes you feel inadequate, unworthy, or deeply flawed to undermine your confidence and gain control over you. By attacking your self-esteem, they create an environment where you doubt yourself, seek their approval, and become more susceptible to their influence. Shaming often starts with subtle put-downs disguised as jokes or constructive criticism. They might say things like, "You really don't know how to dress, do you?" Or, "Wow, you still don't have your life together at your age?" At first, you may brush it off, thinking they're just teasing. But over time, these remarks add up, chipping away at your self-worth. Narcissists also use shaming as a weapon in arguments. If you express an opinion, they might mock you, saying, "That's ridiculous. Do you even know what you're talking about?" If you make a mistake, instead of helping you learn, they make you feel stupid. I can't believe you did that. How embarrassing. They want you to associate every action with a sense of failure and inadequacy. In relationships, narcissists use shame to make you feel undeserving of love or respect. If you set a boundary, they might guilt you with, "Wow, I didn't realize you were so selfish." If you try to pursue personal growth, they might say, "You think you're better than everyone now?" These statements are designed to make you second-guess yourself and remain dependent on their validation. Shaming is particularly damaging because it triggers deep emotional wounds, often connecting to childhood insecurities. If you grew up in an environment where you were made to feel not good enough, a narcissist will exploit that vulnerability, reinforcing the belief that you are inherently flawed. The best way to counter shaming is to recognize it for what it is, a tool of control, not a reflection of your worth. When someone tries to shame you, pause and ask yourself, is this about me, or is this about them wanting control? Stop internalizing their negativity. Surround yourself with people who uplift you, and remind yourself that no one has the right to make you feel small. The only way shame works is if you accept it, refuse to. Competitive one-upping. Competitive one-upping is a manipulation tactic where a narcissist constantly diminishes your achievements, making you feel like nothing you do is ever enough. Instead of celebrating your successes, they immediately shift the focus back to themselves, making sure they always appear superior. Their goal is to keep you feeling small, inferior, and unworthy of recognition. This tactic can be frustrating because it turns every conversation into a competition. If you share a personal accomplishment, like getting a promotion or finishing a challenging project, they won't congratulate you. Instead, they'll immediately respond with something like, "That's nice, but when I got promoted, I was managing way more responsibilities." If you say you ran 5 miles, they'll say, "Oh, I run 10 miles every morning." No matter what you do, they've supposedly done it better, faster, or under harder conditions. Sometimes, one-upping takes the form of downplaying your struggles. If you mention a difficult experience, they'll say, "You think that's bad? When I went through that, it was way worse." Instead of offering empathy or support, they minimize your pain by making it seem like you have no right to feel the way you do. This tactic is designed to make you feel weak and undeserving of compassion. Competitive one-upping can also appear in social settings. If you share an idea or make a joke, they will immediately try to outshine you with a bigger idea or a louder joke. If people praise you, they might interrupt with, "Oh, that reminds me of when I did something even more impressive." They crave attention and admiration, and they can't stand for you to receive any. What makes one-upping so toxic is that it erodes your sense of accomplishment. Over time, you start questioning whether your successes even matter. You might hesitate to share good news, knowing it will only be met with competition rather than celebration. You may even start shrinking yourself, avoiding achievements that could trigger their insecurity. The best way to deal with competitive one-upping is to stop seeking validation from the narcissist. Understand that their behavior is rooted in their own insecurity. They need to feel superior because deep down, they fear being insignificant. Instead of engaging in their competition, let them have their win while you continue focusing on your own growth. Your achievements are valid, whether they acknowledge them or not. A person who constantly needs to outshine you is revealing their own weakness, not yours. Controlling narrative. Controlling the narrative is a manipulation tactic where a narcissist rewrites past events to fit their version of the story. They distort reality, twist facts, and reshape memories to paint themselves in a favorable light while making you seem like the problem. This tactic allows them to avoid responsibility, justify their actions, and maintain control over how others perceive them and how you perceive yourself. At first, The changes in the story might seem minor. They might downplay their role in a conflict, saying, "I never said that," or "You're remembering it wrong." But over time, the distortions become larger, turning them into the innocent party and you into the villain. If you call them out on something hurtful they did, they might rewrite the past entirely, claiming, "I was only trying to help you," or "You were the one who started it." One of the most dangerous aspects of controlling the narrative is gaslighting, making you doubt your own memory and perception. If they repeat their version of the story enough times, you may start questioning whether you were wrong all along. This creates cognitive dissonance, where your memories don't match their words, leaving you confused and more likely to rely on their version of events rather than trusting yourself. Narrative control isn't just about distorting reality for you. It's also about shaping how others see them. They may tell friends, family, or mutual acquaintances a completely different version of events, one where they were the victim and you were the irrational aggressor. If you ever try to expose their behavior, they've already laid the groundwork to make sure no one believes you. This tactic is especially damaging because it can make you feel isolated and powerless. When everyone around you seems to believe their version of events, you may start doubting yourself, thinking, "Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I am the problem." That self-doubt is exactly what they want. It keeps you from pushing back or holding them accountable. The best way to counter this manipulation is to document everything. Keep messages, emails, and written records of important conversations. When you start noticing them rewriting history, remind yourself, the truth does not change just because someone keeps repeating a lie. Trust your memory, seek outside perspectives, and refuse to let them dictate your reality. If someone constantly distorts the past, they do not respect your truth. And a relationship without truth is a relationship built on manipulation. Sabotaging success. Sabotaging success is a control tactic where a narcissist deliberately undermines your progress to keep you dependent on them. Whether it's in your career, education, personal goals, or even social relationships, they make subtle or obvious moves to prevent you from growing beyond their influence. Their goal is simple. If you succeed, you become harder to control. This sabotage can take many forms. In relationships, a narcissist may discourage you from pursuing new opportunities, saying things like, "I just don't want you to get hurt," or "That job will take up too much of your time. What about us?" On the surface, it may seem like concern, but in reality, they are planting doubt in your mind to make you hesitate. If you do start progressing, they may create stress and chaos, picking fights before big events, making you emotionally drained before interviews, or distracting you with unnecessary drama so you can't focus. In family dynamics, narcissistic parents may undermine their child's independence. They might say, "Are you sure you can handle that? It's a lot of responsibility," or "I just think it's safer if you stay here instead of moving away." These comments are meant to keep you reliant on them rather than developing the confidence to succeed on your own. At work, a narcissistic boss or coworker might take credit for your ideas, delay your promotions, or subtly undermine your performance by withholding critical information. If they feel threatened by your competence, they'll do everything in their power to make sure you don't rise above them. A particularly cruel form of success sabotage is emotional sabotage. If you start feeling good about yourself, working on your fitness, or improving your mental health, they might suddenly become distant or critical. They might say, "You've changed," or accuse you of thinking you're better than them. They may even insult or belittle your progress to make you feel like your achievements aren't worth celebrating. The reason narcissists sabotage success is that they thrive on control through dependency. If you succeed financially, emotionally, socially, you become less reliant on them. If you gain confidence, you start setting boundaries. If you realize your worth, you might leave them. They know this, which is why they will do whatever it takes to keep you feeling small, stuck, and insecure. The best way to counter this manipulation is to recognize their attempts to hold you back and push forward anyway. Surround yourself with people who support your growth, not those who fear it. Trust your instincts. If an opportunity excites you, but they try to talk you out of it, ask yourself, are they genuinely concerned, or do they just not want me to grow? True love, friendship, and mentorship encourage success, not sabotage it. If someone consistently makes you feel like you can't or shouldn't achieve more, they are not looking out for your best interests. They are protecting their control. Keep growing despite them, because your success is the one thing they fear the most. Excessive flattery. Excessive flattery is a manipulative tactic where a narcissist showers you with over-the-top praise, admiration, and compliments to gain your trust before subtly exerting control over you. Unlike genuine appreciation, which is consistent and balanced, excessive flattery is often too much, too fast, creating an illusion of deep admiration or connection. The goal is to lower your defenses so you become more susceptible to their influence. At first, excessive flattery feels intoxicating. A narcissist might say things like, "I've never met anyone as amazing as you," or "You're the most special person in my life. I can't believe I found you." They will idealize you, telling you that you are different from everyone else, that they've never felt this way before, and that you are perfect. If this happens early in a relationship, it can feel incredibly validating, like you found someone who truly sees your worth. But the key difference between flattery and genuine admiration is that flattery is transactional. It's given with the expectation of something in return. Once they feel they have you hooked, the tone starts to change. The compliments fade, replaced by subtle criticisms or passive-aggressive comments. You might hear, "I thought you were different, but now I'm not so sure," or "You used to be so amazing. What happened?" This creates an emotional roller coaster. You begin craving the validation they once gave you and start working harder to regain their approval. The high of their praise makes the lows of their disapproval even more painful, keeping you emotionally hooked. Excessive flattery is often part of love bombing, a tactic used in romantic relationships where a narcissist overwhelms their target with affection before withdrawing it to create dependency. But it's not limited to romance. It happens in friendships, workplaces, and even family relationships. A manipulative boss might excessively praise an employee to build loyalty, only to later exploit them for unpaid overtime or unreasonable demands. A toxic friend might put you on a pedestal, making you feel special, only to later use guilt or obligation to control you. The best way to guard against excessive flattery is to look at actions, not just words. If someone's praise feels too intense, too soon, or too exaggerated, be cautious. Real admiration is steady and doesn't disappear the moment you assert yourself or set boundaries. If their compliments feel like a setup rather than a sincere appreciation of who you are, trust your instincts. True respect isn't conditional. It doesn't fluctuate based on how much they can control you. Emotional blackmail. Emotional blackmail is a powerful and cruel manipulation tactic where a narcissist uses fear, guilt, or threats to force you into doing what they want. Instead of making reasonable requests or having open discussions, they create a false sense of obligation, making you feel that if you don't comply, something terrible will happen. The goal is to make you feel trapped, as if saying no isn't an option. Emotional blackmail can take many forms. Guilt tripping. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me." Fear-based threats. "If you leave me, I'll never recover." Blaming you for their actions. "If you don't help me, Whatever happens will be your fault. Using vulnerability as a weapon, I don't know what I'll do if you're not in my life. Social or financial threats. If you break up with me, I'll tell everyone your secrets, or I'll ruin your reputation if you don't cooperate. One of the most dangerous aspects of emotional blackmail is that it plays on your empathy. If you care about the person, their threats or guilt-tripping can feel incredibly heavy. They make you feel like you're responsible for their well-being, their happiness, or even their survival. Over time, you may start making decisions not based on what's right for you, but based on avoiding their emotional punishment. This tactic is often used in romantic relationships, where one partner manipulates the other into staying by creating anxiety about leaving. They might say, "If you break up with me, I'll hurt myself," or "You're abandoning me just like everyone else." In family dynamics, a toxic parent might guilt-trip a child by saying, "After all I've sacrificed for you, and you can't even do this one thing?" In the workplace, an abusive boss might use intimidation, saying, "If you don't work extra hours, don't expect to move up in this company." The danger of emotional blackmail is that it creates a cycle of compliance. The more you give in to their threats, the more they realize they can control you through fear and guilt. And the more you give up your own needs to keep the peace, the harder it becomes to break free. The best way to deal with emotional blackmail is to recognize it and refuse to engage. When someone tries to guilt-trip you, shift the responsibility back to them. If they say, "If you don't do this, I'll be devastated," respond with, "I understand you're upset, but I can't make choices based on fear." If they threaten harm, take it seriously, but do not allow yourself to be manipulated. You are not responsible for someone else's actions. Setting boundaries is the only way to break free. If someone constantly uses fear or guilt to control you, remind yourself, you are not responsible for their emotions. A healthy person will respect your choices, even if they don't like them. A narcissist, however, will only see boundaries as obstacles to their control, and the only way to win their game is to stop playing. Denying reality. Denying reality is a deeply manipulative tactic where a narcissist insists that things never happen the way you remember, even when undeniable proof exists. Unlike an honest misunderstanding, this is a deliberate attempt to distort facts, rewrite history, and make you question your own perception. Their goal is to make you so confused and uncertain that you start doubting yourself and relying on them to define what is real. At first, their denials may seem minor. Perhaps they dismiss a conversation you clearly recall or claim they never made a promise you remember. Over time, their behavior escalates as they begin rejecting not just small details but major events. When confronted about something hurtful they did, they may respond with absolute certainty, insisting, "That never happened," even when you have texts, emails, or witnesses to prove otherwise. If you try to present evidence, they may twist their words, claiming, "That's not what I meant," or accuse you of misinterpreting things, saying, "You always overreact." This form of gaslighting slowly erodes your trust in your own memory, making you feel disoriented and dependent on them to provide a version of events that makes sense. What makes this tactic particularly dangerous is its long-term psychological impact. Repeated exposure to reality denial can make you question whether you are being irrational or overly emotional. Eventually, you may stop trusting your own instincts altogether, assuming that if they insist something didn't happen, maybe you were wrong. This self-doubt makes it easier for them to control you as you begin to accept their reality over your own. The best way to counter this manipulation is to trust your own perceptions and stop seeking validation from someone who benefits from keeping you confused. Keeping records of important conversations and recognizing patterns of denial can help you regain clarity. If someone constantly rewrites the past, they are showing you that truth is not important to them, only control. the strongest response is to disengage from the argument and remind yourself that their denial does not erase reality. Grooming. Grooming is a slow and calculated process where a narcissist conditions you to accept mistreatment without realizing it. Unlike sudden, obvious abuse, grooming happens in subtle stages, lowering your defenses until you are trapped in a toxic dynamic. It begins with an overwhelming sense of affection and admiration, making you feel special and deeply connected to them. This idealization phase builds trust and creates a strong emotional bond, making it difficult to see the warning signs that follow. Once they have secured your trust, the gradual conditioning begins. At first, they may introduce minor red flags. Perhaps they make a slightly insulting comment, invade your personal boundaries, or dismiss your feelings in a subtle way. If you react, they tell you that you are overreacting or misinterpreting their words. If you accept it, they push a little further. Over time, these behaviors escalate, but because the changes happen gradually, you don't immediately recognize how much you've begun tolerating. You may begin excusing their actions, convincing yourself that no relationship is perfect, or that maybe you are being too sensitive. One of the most damaging aspects of grooming is that it normalizes toxic behavior. What initially felt unacceptable starts to seem like an ordinary part of the relationship. If you try to set boundaries, they make you feel guilty, insisting that this is just how they are, or that real love means accepting flaws. You may even find yourself justifying their behavior to others, unknowingly defending the very mistreatment that is keeping you emotionally trapped. The reason grooming is so effective is that it makes you question where the line between healthy and unhealthy truly is. Because the abuse does not start suddenly. By the time you realize what is happening, you may already feel too entangled to leave. The best way to protect yourself is to recognize patterns early. If someone slowly increases their control, makes you doubt yourself, or conditions you to tolerate behavior you once found unacceptable, trust your instincts. Toxic behavior is rarely extreme at the beginning. It starts with small tests to see how much they can get away with. If someone is constantly pushing your limits, the solution is not to adjust, but to walk away before the cycle deepens. Feigning helplessness. Feigning helplessness is a covert yet highly effective manipulation tactic where a narcissist pretends to be incapable of handling responsibilities, solving problems, or making decisions, only to shift the burden onto you. Unlike genuine incompetence, this is not a lack of ability, but a calculated move to make you feel obligated to take over. The goal is simple: make you do the work while they avoid responsibility. Over time, this creates a one-sided dynamic where you are constantly solving their problems, managing their obligations, and carrying their load while they sit back and play the victim. At first, their helplessness might appear harmless or even endearing. They may say things like, "I've just never been good at organizing things. Can you take care of it?" Or, "I don't know how to cook like you do. Can you handle dinner?" These requests seem small at first, and because you're a caring person, you step in to help. But as time goes on, you begin to notice a pattern. They struggle only when it's something they don't want to do. They will conveniently be too confused to handle their finances, but will have no issue managing online shopping or planning a vacation. They will claim they don't know how to clean or run errands, yet they can navigate complex work projects or social events effortlessly. If you ever refuse to help, they double down on their incompetence, making you feel like a bad person for letting them struggle. They might sulk, act overwhelmed, or even become resentful, hoping you'll cave and do it for them. One of the most frustrating aspects of feigning helplessness is that it forces you into a parental role. You end up taking on responsibilities that they should be handling themselves, not because they truly need help, but because they want to avoid effort. This can be especially damaging in romantic relationships, where one partner becomes the caretaker while the narcissist enjoys a free ride. Instead of equal partnership, you find yourself managing their life while they offer excuses. In some cases, they use helplessness as a weaponized guilt trip. If you refuse to step in, they accuse you of being unhelpful, unsupportive, or even cruel. You know I struggle with these things. Why won't you just help me? If you try to teach them how to handle their own responsibilities, they resist, deliberately failing, so you will get frustrated and take over. This ensures that they remain dependent on you while you become increasingly drained. The most dangerous part of this tactic is that it slowly conditions you to accept an unbalanced dynamic where you are constantly giving and they are constantly taking. At first, you help out because you care. Then, it becomes an expectation. Eventually, you realize you are carrying the entire weight of the relationship while they contribute nothing in return. The best way to counter this manipulation is to stop stepping in. If someone is truly incapable, they will want to learn. But if someone is just pretending to be helpless, they will resist any attempts to improve. Instead of fixing things for them, offer guidance, but let them figure it out. If they refuse, let them face the consequences of their own inaction. You are not responsible for carrying someone who is perfectly capable of walking on their own. Double standards. Double standards are a classic narcissistic manipulation tactic where they hold you to strict rules and expectations while refusing to follow them themselves. This creates an unfair, one-sided dynamic where they remain above accountability while you are constantly under scrutiny. Their goal is to keep you controlled, always striving to meet impossible standards, while they remain free to do whatever they please without consequences. In relationships, this may manifest as them demanding total honesty from you while lying whenever it suits them. If you hide something, it's deceitful. If they hide something, it's not a big deal. They may expect you to be emotionally available 24/7, listening to all their complaints and needs, yet when you need support, they dismiss you, act uninterested, or disappear altogether. They might demand that you respect their boundaries, insisting that certain topics are off limits, yet when you try to set your own boundaries, they completely ignore them. This behavior isn't just limited to romantic relationships. It appears in friendships, families, and workplaces. A narcissistic friend may expect you to be there for them at all times, yet they are nowhere to be found when you need help. A toxic parent may enforce strict rules on their children, yet behave recklessly themselves, using the excuse that they are the parent and don't have to follow the same rules. In the workplace, a manipulative boss may criticize employees for minor mistakes, but refuse to take responsibility for their own failures. One of the most frustrating aspects of double standards is that when you try to point out their hypocrisy, they refuse to acknowledge it. Instead of admitting they are being unfair, they flip the script and make you feel guilty for questioning them. If you say, "Why is it okay for you to do this, but not for me?" they might respond with, "You're always looking for something to complain about," or "You don't understand. It's different when I do it." They may even gaslight you, acting as if their hypocrisy doesn't exist, making you question whether you are imagining things. Over time, this manipulation can lead to emotional exhaustion because no matter how hard you try, you will never meet their ever-changing expectations. The rules will always shift to keep you at a disadvantage. If you work hard to be the perfect partner, friend, or employee, they will simply raise the bar or change the rules entirely. This keeps you trapped in a cycle of chasing approval that will never come. The only way to break free from double standards is to stop playing by their rules. Instead of trying to make them see their hypocrisy, Recognize that they already know what they're doing. They just don't care. Stop seeking fairness from someone who is committed to control. Instead, set your own standards and refuse to engage in their manipulative games. If they expect more from you than they are willing to give in return, walk away. A relationship without mutual respect is not a relationship. It's a power struggle, and the only way to win is to stop participating. Exaggeration. Exaggeration is a manipulation tactic where a narcissist over-dramatizes events, emotions, or circumstances to distort your perception of reality. By blowing things out of proportion, they create confusion, guilt, or fear, making it easier for them to control your reactions and decisions. This tactic is especially effective because it shifts the focus away from the truth and onto their exaggerated version of events, making you feel like you must constantly manage their emotions or defend yourself against false accusations. A narcissist may exaggerate to make themselves look like the victim. If you confront them about a hurtful action, they might respond with, "I can't believe you're attacking me like this. You always find a way to blame me for everything." By making the situation sound far more extreme than it actually is, they make you feel guilty for even bringing up the issue. Instead of addressing your concern, you end up comforting them for something they aren't even suffering from. They also use exaggeration to paint you as the villain. A minor disagreement may turn into them saying, "You screamed at me and disrespected me completely," when in reality, you simply expressed your frustration in a calm voice. If you set a boundary, they might say, "You're shutting me out. You don't even care about me anymore." This extreme response makes you second-guess whether you were too harsh, leading you to apologize when you've done nothing wrong. Another form of exaggeration is when narcissists make their own achievements or struggles seem far greater than they actually are. If you accomplish something, they immediately try to overshadow it with their own exaggerated success, saying something like, "That's nice, but when I did something similar, it was way harder and I did it much better." If they face a minor inconvenience, they act as if their entire world is falling apart, demanding attention and sympathy while ignoring the fact that other people also have struggles. What makes exaggeration such a dangerous tactic is that it alters your perception over time. If someone repeatedly exaggerates their suffering, you may start feeling guilty for standing up for yourself. If they constantly blow up minor mistakes, you may start walking on eggshells, afraid that anything you do will turn into a massive issue. This is exactly what they want, to keep you so emotionally overwhelmed that you stop questioning them and start catering to their exaggerated emotions instead. The best way to handle exaggeration is to stick to the facts. When they try to over-dramatize a situation, calmly restate the reality of what actually happened without getting sucked into their emotional manipulation. If they insist on making a small issue seem catastrophic, refuse to engage in their theatrics. A person who exaggerates everything is not interested in the truth. They are only interested in control. The strongest response? Stop playing their game and trust your own perception instead. Backhanded compliments. Backhanded compliments are a passive-aggressive manipulation tactic where a narcissist disguises an insult as praise. Instead of giving genuine compliments, they deliver comments that seem flattering on the surface but actually undermine your confidence. The purpose of this tactic is to keep you constantly questioning your self-worth, making you easier to control. At first, a backhanded compliment might seem confusing. You might hear something like, "Wow, I didn't expect you to do so well on that project. Good for you." It sounds positive, but the implication is that they never thought you were capable in the first place. Another example is, "You look great today. You should dress like this more often." Instead of a simple compliment, they are subtly suggesting that you don't normally look good. Narcissists use backhanded compliments to undermine your confidence without making it obvious. If they outright insulted you, you would immediately recognize the attack and push back. But by wrapping the insult inside a compliment, they create a situation where you feel unsure of whether you should feel hurt or grateful. This confusion makes their manipulation even more effective. In social settings, they may use backhanded compliments to humiliate you in front of others while maintaining plausible deniability. For example, in a group, they might say, "It's so inspiring how you don't care what other people think about how you dress." If you call them out, they can easily act innocent, saying, "I was just giving you a compliment. You're so sensitive." This tactic allows them to chip away at your self-esteem while making you look like the unreasonable one for reacting. Over time, exposure to backhanded compliments can make you doubt your own abilities and appearance. You may start seeking their approval, trying harder to meet their expectations, even though their comments are designed to make you feel inadequate no matter what you do. This puts you in a never-ending cycle where you crave validation from the very person who is constantly undermining you. The best way to deal with backhanded compliments is to recognize them for what they are: disguised insults meant to manipulate you. Instead of reacting emotionally or trying to seek their approval, stay neutral and call it out directly. You can respond with something like, "That didn't really sound like a compliment. What did you mean by that?" This forces them to either clarify their words or backpedal, exposing their manipulative intent. The key is to stop letting their passive-aggressive remarks define how you see yourself. A real compliment lifts you up. A backhanded one is meant to bring you down, and once you recognize the difference, their ability to manipulate you weakens, overloading you with information. Overloading you with information, also known as information dumping or overloading with details, is a manipulation tactic where a narcissist bombards you with excessive, unnecessary, or confusing details to overwhelm, distract, and control you. The goal is not to communicate clearly or help you understand a situation, but rather to create mental exhaustion, making it easier for them to push their agenda without resistance. At first, this tactic may seem like simple oversharing. The narcissist might flood you with irrelevant facts, endless justifications, or excessive background details when discussing an issue. But instead of clarifying things, their explanation becomes so long-winded, convoluted, and overwhelming that it leaves you mentally drained. You struggle to keep up, to process everything they are saying, and in the end, you feel lost, confused, and unable to challenge them. One way they use this tactic is to drown out your valid concerns. If you confront them about something they did wrong, they respond with a wall of unnecessary information, sidetracking the conversation. You ask a simple question, and they give a long-winded circular response that leaves you more confused than before. Instead of answering directly, they throw in unrelated details, obscure explanations, and distractions, making it difficult to hold them accountable. For example, if you ask them why they lied about something, they might respond with, "Well, first of all, let's go back to the beginning. You remember last week when you asked me about that? You were already in a bad mood, so I thought maybe you weren't ready to hear the truth. And besides, if you think about it, the way society views honesty is very flawed. What even counts as a lie anyway? You can't really blame me for wanting to avoid a fight, and you're not innocent either, because you've hidden things from me before. Also, if you really think about it, the way you reacted proves that I was right not to tell you in the first place." By the time they're done talking, you're too exhausted to continue arguing. The original issue has been buried under layers of unnecessary information, and you've been pushed into submission simply because you don't have the energy to untangle their mess of words. Another way they use this tactic is to intentionally overwhelm you with rules, demands, or expectations. In relationships, they might give you conflicting instructions, ensuring that no matter what you do, you'll always be wrong. In professional settings, a manipulative boss might give you an overwhelming amount of information with unrealistic deadlines, then blame you when you fail to keep up. The more mentally overloaded you are, the easier it becomes for them to control you, because exhausted people are easier to manipulate. The best way to counter this tactic is to refuse to get lost in their word maze. If you sense that they are overloading you with unnecessary information, interrupt and redirect the conversation back to the key issue. Say something like, "I don't need all these extra details, just answer the question directly." If they continue to overwhelm you with information, recognize it for what it is, a distraction, not an explanation. Instead of trying to keep up, shut down the conversation and walk away. A person who truly values communication will aim for clarity, not confusion. Playing dumb. Playing dumb is a calculated manipulation tactic where a narcissist pretends to be clueless, forgetful, or incapable of understanding a situation to avoid accountability, responsibility, or effort. Unlike genuine confusion or forgetfulness, this is a deliberate act. They know exactly what they're doing, but pretend not to in order to gain an advantage. At first, their feigned ignorance may seem innocent. They might claim they didn't realize they hurt you, forgot something important, or didn't understand what you meant. However, over time, a pattern emerges. They only seem to be confused when it benefits them. When it comes to responsibilities they don't want to take on, promises they don't want to keep, or boundaries they don't want to respect, they suddenly become completely clueless. For example, if they fail to follow through on an important commitment, they might say, "Oh, I didn't realize that was such a big deal. I thought you meant something different." If they overstep a boundary, they might claim, "Oh, I didn't understand what you meant by that. I didn't think you were serious." If you catch them in a lie, they might shrug and say, "I don't remember saying that. Maybe you misheard me." What makes this tactic especially frustrating is that it puts all the burden onto you. Instead of them taking responsibility for their actions, you are forced to re-explain things, remind them constantly, or lower your expectations. You may start questioning yourself, wondering, maybe I wasn't clear enough, or maybe I'm expecting too much. This is exactly what they want, to make you second-guess yourself instead of holding them accountable. Another way narcissists use this tactic is by acting incompetent to get out of responsibilities. In relationships, they may claim they don't know how to cook, clean, or manage basic tasks, leaving you to do all the work. At work, they may pretend they just don't understand certain tasks so that you'll end up doing them for them. If you refuse, they may mess up the task intentionally so that next time, you won't even ask them to do it. Over time, this forces you to take on their responsibilities while they enjoy the benefits of your extra effort. Playing dumb is also a powerful gaslighting tool. If you call them out on something, they might act confused, saying things like, "I have no idea what you're talking about," or "You must be imagining things." If you present evidence of something they said or did, they may act completely bewildered, as if they can't comprehend how they could have possibly done such a thing. This makes you doubt your own reality, leading you to second-guess yourself instead of pushing back against their lies. The best way to counter this tactic is to stop giving them the benefit of the doubt. If someone consistently forgets, doesn't understand, or didn't realize things that are clearly important to you, but always seem to remember things that benefit them, recognize it for what it is: manipulation, not ignorance. Instead of explaining, reminding, or giving them more chances, hold them accountable for their actions. If they truly cared, they wouldn't forget things that matter to you over and over again. Their selective cluelessness is not a flaw, it's a strategy. The best response? Refuse to play along and let them face the consequences of their own feigned ignorance. Pity plays. Pity plays are a powerful manipulation tactic where a narcissist uses sob stories, exaggerated hardships, or emotional suffering to gain sympathy and control over you. Instead of taking responsibility for their actions, they shift the focus onto their supposed pain, making you feel guilty for holding them accountable. Their goal is not to seek support, but to make you lower your boundaries, excuse their behavior, and cater to their needs at your own expense. At first, their pity plays may seem genuine. They may share heartbreaking experiences from their past, talk about how everyone has treated them unfairly, or claim that life has always been hard on them. You, being a compassionate person, naturally feel empathy and want to help. However, over time, you notice a pattern. Whenever they are in trouble, caught in a lie, or confronted about their bad behavior, they suddenly have a tragic story to tell. For example, if you call them out for disrespecting you instead of addressing the issue, they might say, "I'm sorry, I just had a really hard childhood, and I don't know how to show love properly." If you tell them you need space, they might suddenly bring up a traumatic event saying, "I feel abandoned. Everyone leaves me. I thought you were different." If you refuse to do something they want, they may talk about how much they are struggling, making you feel like saying no would make you a bad person. Narcissists use pity plays in many ways. They may fake or exaggerate health problems to keep you from leaving them. They may claim to be struggling financially, even when they aren't, so you'll feel obligated to support them. They may talk about how lonely or depressed they are, making you feel guilty for setting boundaries. If you try to walk away, they may even threaten self-harm, saying things like, "If you leave, I don't know what I'll do to myself." This is emotional blackmail, designed to trap you through fear and guilt. The danger of pity plays is that they turn your kindness into a weapon against you. The more you fall for their sob stories, the more they will use them to manipulate you. Eventually, you realize that no matter how much you help, they never take steps to improve their situation. They simply use their suffering as a permanent excuse to avoid responsibility and demand endless attention. The best way to deal with pity plays is to recognize the difference between genuine pain and manipulation. If someone only brings up their hardships when they want something, it's not a cry for help, it's a tool for control. Offer support to those who truly want to grow, but don't let guilt force you into tolerating mistreatment. You are not responsible for fixing someone who refuses to help themselves. A narcissist will always have a new sob story, but you are not obligated to be their emotional caretaker. Love withdrawal. Love withdrawal is a cruel and calculated manipulation tactic where a narcissist suddenly takes away affection, attention, and warmth as a way to punish you and regain control. One moment, they are loving, attentive, and affectionate. The next, they turn cold, distant, and indifferent, leaving you confused, anxious, and desperate to get back into their good graces. Their goal is to make you feel emotionally dependent on their approval so they can control your behavior. At first, love withdrawal may seem like a normal bad mood. You might think they are just tired, stressed, or distracted. But soon, you realize it happens whenever you say something they don't like, assert your boundaries, or stop catering to their demands. The moment you do something they disapprove of, they shut down completely, ignoring your messages, acting distant, refusing to show affection, or giving you the silent treatment. This tactic is especially effective because humans are wired to crave connection and consistency. When love is suddenly taken away, it creates anxiety and confusion. You start replaying conversations in your head, wondering, did I do something wrong? Are they upset with me? How do I fix this? The emotional distress makes you desperate to regain their affection, and before you realize it, you are apologizing for things you didn't do, suppressing your needs and walking on eggshells just to keep them from withdrawing again. Narcissists use love withdrawal in several ways. In romantic relationships, they may go from passionate and affectionate to cold and uninterested overnight, making you feel like you did something to ruin the relationship. In friendships, they may suddenly ignore you, cancel plans, or stop engaging with you, making you anxious about what went wrong. In family dynamics, a narcissistic parent might withhold affection, saying things like, "I'm disappointed in you. I don't even want to look at you right now." In the workplace, a manipulative boss might stop acknowledging your efforts or exclude you from meetings as a way to make you feel insecure about your job. Over time, love withdrawal conditions you to accept mistreatment. You learn that speaking up for yourself, setting boundaries, or challenging them will result in emotional abandonment. Instead of risking their coldness, you start pleasing them at the expense of your own needs. You become addicted to their approval, desperately seeking their love while they remain in complete control. The best way to break free from love withdrawal is to recognize that their affection was never real love. It was a tool for control. Real love does not disappear the moment you assert yourself. Real love does not punish, manipulate, or condition you to suppress your needs. If someone consistently takes away love as a form of punishment, they are showing you that their love is conditional. The strongest response? Refuse to chase what should be given freely. Instead of begging for their approval, shift your energy toward people who offer love that is steady, secure, and not a weapon. Creating confusion. Creating confusion is a powerful manipulation tactic where a narcissist deliberately sends mixed messages, contradicts themselves, and constantly shifts the goalposts to keep you mentally off balance. The purpose of this tactic is to make you doubt your own judgment, struggle to make decisions, and ultimately become more dependent on them for clarity. Instead of communicating clearly, they thrive on making situations as murky and unpredictable as possible so that you remain uncertain and easier to control. At first, their words and actions may seem inconsistent rather than intentionally manipulative. One day, they praise you, and the next, they criticize you for the same thing they admired. They might say they want commitment, only to pull away when you get close. They may encourage you to be independent, then shame you for not needing them enough. Over time, you start noticing that their contradictions are not accidental. They are strategic. A classic example of creating confusion is giving mixed signals. In a romantic relationship, they may act deeply in love one day, then distant and uninterested the next, leaving you unsure of where you stand. When you ask for clarity, they dodge the conversation or shift the blame onto you, saying things like, "Why do you always need labels?" or "You're overanalyzing things." This keeps you chasing their validation while they enjoy keeping you on edge. Another way they create confusion is through contradictory expectations. They tell you to be more confident, but criticize you when you assert yourself. They encourage you to express your feelings, but call you overly emotional when you do. No matter what you say or do, they find a way to make you feel like you're always in the wrong. This keeps you trapped in a cycle of self-doubt and over-explaining yourself, constantly seeking their approval while they remain in control. Perhaps the most damaging aspect of this manipulation is gaslighting through inconsistency. They deny things they previously said, change stories mid-conversation, or act as if past events never happened. If you bring up inconsistencies, they say things like, "I never said that," or "You're remembering it wrong." Over time, this erodes your trust in your own memory and makes you second-guess everything, even your own emotions and instincts. The best way to protect yourself from this tactic is to trust your perception and stop looking for consistency where there is none. If someone's words and actions never align, stop trying to decode them. Recognize that the confusion is intentional and refuse to let them control your sense of reality. Instead of questioning yourself, step back and observe. If they constantly create uncertainty while positioning themselves as the only source of clarity, that's not a relationship, it's manipulation. Mocking. Mocking is a subtle yet deeply damaging manipulation tactic where a narcissist uses sarcasm, ridicule, and belittling humor to undermine your self-esteem and dismiss your feelings. Unlike direct insults, which are easy to recognize, mockery is often disguised as jokes or playful teasing, making it harder to call out without seeming overly sensitive. The goal is to make you feel foolish, insecure, and hesitant to express yourself, ensuring that they always hold the upper hand in interactions. At first, mocking may seem harmless. They might imitate the way you talk, roll their eyes when you speak, or use an exaggerated tone to mock your concerns. If you react, they immediately downplay it, saying things like, "Relax, it was just a joke," or "Wow, you're so sensitive." This invalidates your feelings while allowing them to continue their behavior without consequences. One way narcissists use mocking is by ridiculing your beliefs, goals, or emotions. If you share something meaningful, they might laugh and say, "That's cute that you think that," or, "Oh, so you're an expert now." Instead of engaging in a respectful discussion, they use sarcasm to shame you into silence. This creates self-doubt, making you second-guess your thoughts and ideas before even expressing them. Mocking can also take the form of public humiliation. In social settings, they might make embarrassing jokes at your expense, exaggerate your mistakes, or bring up private matters in front of others just to watch you squirm. If you confront them, they act innocent, saying, "I was just teasing, everyone else thought it was funny." This tactic allows them to chip away at your confidence while making you look like the unreasonable one for not being able to take a joke. In more toxic dynamics, narcissists use mocking to punish you for standing up for yourself. If you assert a boundary, they may roll their eyes and say, "Oh wow, someone's got an attitude today." If you express hurt feelings, they may mimic your voice in an exaggerated, childish tone, making you feel ridiculous for even trying to communicate. This not only invalidates your emotions, but also conditions you to stay silent rather than risk further humiliation. The long-term effect of being mocked is that you start censoring yourself. You hesitate to share your thoughts, express emotions, or assert boundaries because you fear being ridiculed. This gives the narcissist even more control, as they create an environment where you constantly suppress yourself to avoid their sarcasm and disdain. The best way to counter mocking is to refuse to engage in their game. If they make a sarcastic remark, don't laugh along or try to defend yourself. Call it out directly. Say something like, "That didn't sound like a joke. What are you trying to say?" This forces them to either acknowledge their intent or backpedal. If they continue, recognize that their behavior is not playful. It is a deliberate attempt to erode your confidence. Surround yourself with people who respect you and never allow sarcasm to be used as a tool for control. A real joke should make both people laugh, not just the one in power. Fake apologies. Fake apologies are a deceptive manipulation tactic where a narcissist pretends to take responsibility for their actions but has no genuine remorse. Instead of truly acknowledging their wrongdoing, they use empty words, vague statements, or manipulative phrasing to make you believe they've changed, only to continue the same behavior. Their goal is not to make amends, but to pacify you, regain control, and avoid consequences. At first glance, a fake apology might sound convincing. They may say something like, "I'm sorry if I hurt you," or "I didn't mean to upset you." However, upon closer inspection, their wording often shifts the blame onto you rather than taking true responsibility. A real apology acknowledges fault, whereas a narcissist's fake apology often sounds like, "I'm sorry you took it that way." Translation: It's your fault for feeling hurt. I guess I can't do anything right. Translation: I'm the real victim here. Fine. I'm sorry. Can we drop it now? Translation: I just want to shut you up. I'm sorry, but you know how I am. Translation: I have no intention of changing. Another hallmark of fake apologies is quick reversals. If they do apologize, the moment you express lingering hurt or ask for a real discussion, they become irritated. They might say, I already said sorry. What more do you want? This makes you feel guilty for wanting accountability, forcing you to accept their empty apology just to keep the peace. In some cases, they use apologies as bait. They might shower you with seemingly heartfelt words saying, I've thought a lot about this, and I realize I was wrong. This moment of vulnerability makes you believe they've changed, until they slowly start slipping back into the same toxic behavior. Over time, you realize their apologies are simply a cycle. They hurt you, pretend to be sorry, lure you back in, then repeat the process. The most dangerous form of a fake apology is apology as manipulation. If they sense they are losing control over you, they may use an exaggerated, dramatic apology to make you feel bad for even bringing up their behavior. They may cry, beg, or act as if they are broken, saying things like, I hate myself for what I did. I don't deserve you. This reversal of roles makes you feel obligated to comfort them rather than holding them accountable. The best way to deal with fake apologies is to stop accepting words without actions. A true apology is followed by changed behavior, accountability, and genuine remorse. If someone repeatedly says sorry but keeps doing the same thing, they are not apologizing, they are manipulating. Instead of getting caught in the cycle, recognize that an empty apology is just another tool for control. The strongest response? Stop giving second chances to words that don't come with real change. Demanding perfection. Demanding perfection is a cruel manipulation tactic where a narcissist sets impossible standards for you, ensuring that no matter how hard you try, you will never be good enough. They constantly move the goalposts, raising expectations the moment you meet them. Their goal is to keep you feeling inadequate, unworthy, and always striving for their approval. At first, they may present their high standards as a form of motivation. They might say, I just want the best for you, or I know you can do better. However, over time, you realize that no matter how much effort you put in, it's never enough. If you succeed, they dismiss your achievement or immediately point out what you could have done better. If you fail, they magnify your mistakes and make you feel like a disappointment. In relationships, they may demand that you always look perfect, act a certain way, or meet impossible emotional expectations. They might expect you to never get upset, always be understanding, and never make mistakes. If you show any flaws or human emotions, they act disappointed, saying things like, I thought you were different, or I don't know if I can be with someone who can't control their emotions. This trains you to suppress your feelings, constantly fearing that you will never measure up. In the workplace or family dynamics, a narcissist may use perfectionism as a weapon. A toxic boss might demand that you work long hours, redo tasks unnecessarily, or meet unrealistic deadlines, only to find something wrong no matter how well you perform. A narcissistic parent may compare you to others, saying, why can't you be more like your sibling? Or, you'll never make it if you keep making these small mistakes. One of the most dangerous aspects of demanding perfection is that it erodes your self-esteem over time. When you are constantly told that what you're doing isn't good enough, you start believing that you aren't good enough. You push yourself harder, try to meet their expectations, and exhaust yourself in the process, only to still feel like a failure. This keeps you stuck in a cycle of self-doubt and seeking their validation, which they will never truly give. A key sign of this manipulation is hypocrisy. While they demand perfection from you, they do not hold themselves to the same standards. They expect you to be flawless, yet they make excuses for their own mistakes. If you point out their contradictions, they gaslight you, saying things like, "That's different," or "I don't have to explain myself to you." This imbalance keeps you constantly striving for approval while they remain untouchable. The only way to break free from this trap is to reject their impossible standards and set your own. Instead of seeking their validation, recognize that their criticism is not about you. It's about their need for control. True love, support, and leadership do not require perfection. The strongest response to someone who demands perfection is to stop playing their game and embrace your worth, flaws and all. Shifting goalposts. Shifting goalposts is a manipulation tactic where a narcissist constantly changes their expectations and demands, ensuring that no matter what you do, it is never enough. Just when you think you've met their standards, they move the target, raise the bar, or change the rules, keeping you trapped in an endless cycle of trying to prove yourself. Their goal is to keep you chasing their approval while they remain in complete control. At first, their expectations may seem reasonable. They might say, "I just need you to communicate better," or "I want to see more effort from you." But the moment you adjust and meet their request, they suddenly demand something new. If you become more communicative, they say you are talking too much. If you work harder, they say you are still not doing enough. No matter how much you give, it is never sufficient, because they are not looking for progress, they are looking for control. In romantic relationships, shifting goalposts can take the form of constantly changing what they want from you. One day, they want you to be independent. The next, they criticize you for not being more affectionate. If you express emotions, they accuse you of being too sensitive. If you hold back, they say you are distant. This emotional whiplash keeps you constantly doubting yourself, making you feel like you must work harder to be good enough for them. In the workplace, a narcissistic boss may set impossible standards, asking you to meet unrealistic deadlines or perform beyond your job role. If you meet their expectations, they immediately demand more, saying things like, "I knew you could do better, so why haven't you done even more?" Instead of acknowledging your effort, they continuously shift the standard higher, ensuring that you never feel accomplished. Parents and family members can also use this tactic to keep you feeling inadequate. A narcissistic parent may say, "I'll be proud of you if you get good grades." But when you achieve them, they say, "Grades don't matter if you're not also successful in sports." Once you excel in sports, they say, "That's nice, but what about your social life?" The goal is to make sure you never feel secure in your achievements, keeping you hungry for their validation, which they will never truly give. The damage caused by shifting goalposts is deep and long-lasting. Over time, you start believing that you are the problem, that if you could just do a little more, work a little harder, or be a little better, they would finally accept you. This leads to chronic self-doubt, exhaustion, and low self-esteem because no matter how much effort you put in, the finish line keeps moving. The best way to counter this manipulation is to stop playing their game. Recognize that their expectations are designed to be unreachable, not because you are failing, but because they never intended for you to win. Instead of chasing their approval, set your own goals based on what you value. A person who genuinely respects you will celebrate your efforts, not constantly demand more. The strongest response? Recognize your own worth and walk away from people who make you feel like you will never be enough. Unpredictability. Unpredictability is a psychological manipulation tactic where a narcissist constantly shifts their mood, behavior, and reactions to keep you emotionally off balance. One moment, they are affectionate and loving. The next, they are distant, cruel, or dismissive. This roller coaster of emotions creates anxiety, fear, and dependency, making you feel like you must always be on guard or earn their good side. At first, unpredictability may seem like natural mood swings. Everyone has good and bad days, right? But as time goes on, you start noticing that their moods are not random. They are calculated. If you do something they like, they reward you with warmth and affection. But the moment you do something they disapprove of, such as setting a boundary, disagreeing with them, or not giving them enough attention, they suddenly turn cold, distant, or even hostile. This hot and cold behavior keeps you constantly walking on eggshells, unsure of what will set them off. One day, they laugh at your joke. The next, they snap at you for the same joke, claiming you are being annoying. One day, they shower you with compliments. The next, they act like you don't exist. This inconsistency creates deep psychological distress, making you feel like you must constantly monitor their moods and adjust your behavior to keep them happy. In relationships, unpredictability can create trauma bonding, where you become addicted to their approval. Because their affection is given inconsistently, you start craving the good moments, holding on to the belief that if you just act the right way, you can get back to the loving version of them. However, the truth is that they control when and how they give you affection, and they use it as a tool to keep you hooked. In friendships, a narcissistic friend may alternate between being extremely supportive and completely indifferent. If you do something they like, they are your best friend. But if you ever challenge them, stand up for yourself, or make a decision they don't approve of, they withdraw, making you feel like you are being punished. Over time, you become anxious about upsetting them, prioritizing their needs over your own to avoid being abandoned or rejected. At work, a manipulative boss may switch between being kind and cruel to keep employees submissive. One day, they praise your work. The next, they criticize you over something minor. By keeping you unsure of where you stand, they ensure that you work harder out of fear rather than confidence. The long-term damage of unpredictability is that it rewires your brain to live in a state of anxiety. You start second-guessing everything, wondering if you said the wrong thing, did the wrong thing, or made the wrong choice. This creates emotional dependence because you start looking to them for cues on how to act rather than trusting yourself. The best way to break free from this manipulation is to stop trying to predict their moods and recognize the pattern. If someone is constantly shifting between being kind and cruel, it's not because of you. It's because they enjoy keeping you anxious and dependent. A healthy relationship is consistent, not a guessing game. Instead of adjusting to their ever-changing moods, step back and observe. Do they act unpredictably whenever you assert yourself? Do they punish you with silence or withdrawal when you don't meet their demands? If the answer is yes, recognize that their behavior is not emotional instability, it's emotional manipulation. The strongest response to unpredictability is to stop chasing their approval. Instead of trying to figure out what will keep them happy, focus on what brings you peace. A person who truly cares for you will make you feel safe and secure, not constantly anxious about when they will turn against you. The moment you realize that their unpredictability is a tool for control, you take away their power over you. Forced isolation. Forced isolation is a deeply insidious manipulation tactic where a narcissist gradually cuts you off from your support systems, family, friends, colleagues, and even online communities to make you entirely dependent on them. This isolation is rarely immediate or obvious. Instead, it happens in subtle, calculated ways, making it feel like your own decision rather than something they orchestrated. Their goal is to remove outside perspectives, ensuring that they are the sole influence over your thoughts, emotions, and choices. At first, they may act as though they simply care about you. They might express mild disapproval about certain friends, saying things like, I just don't think they have your best interests at heart, or I get a bad feeling about them. This plants a seed of doubt in your mind, making you start questioning your relationships. Over time, they escalate their disapproval, finding reasons to dislike anyone who provides you with emotional support. They may claim that your loved ones are jealous of your relationship or success, toxic and secretly trying to sabotage you, manipulative and turning you against them, or a bad influence who doesn't truly care about you. At the same time, they may sabotage your relationships directly. They might cause unnecessary drama, misinterpret innocent comments, or create arguments that make you feel exhausted from dealing with both them and your loved ones. Eventually, you start avoiding friends and family, not because you want to, but because it feels easier than dealing with the constant tension they create. In some cases, they use guilt and emotional manipulation to keep you from connecting with others. If you mention spending time with a friend or family member, they act hurt, withdrawn, or even angry. They might say, "I guess I'm not important to you anymore," or, "Wow, I see where your priorities are." These reactions make you feel bad for wanting a life outside of them, so you slowly start pulling away from others just to keep the peace. Once they have successfully isolated you, they become your only source of validation and support. This creates emotional dependency, making it harder for you to recognize their manipulation. Without outside perspectives, their behavior starts feeling normal because there is no one left to challenge it. Even if you suspect something is wrong, you may feel too alone to leave because they've made you believe that no one else would understand or support you. The best way to counter forced isolation is to recognize the pattern early. If someone consistently tries to turn you against your friends and family, or if you find yourself withdrawing from your support system because it's easier, step back and ask yourself, who benefits from my isolation? Healthy relationships encourage connections, not restrict them. A person who truly cares about you will never make you choose between them and your loved ones. If someone is cutting you off from the world, they are not protecting you. They are trapping you. Turning others against you. Turning others against you, also known as smear campaigning, is a vicious form of manipulation where a narcissist spreads lies, distorts reality, and subtly poisons people's perception of you to isolate you and maintain control. By doing this, they not only damage your relationships, but also protect themselves from exposure. If they can make others doubt you, then no one will believe you when you finally speak out against them. This tactic is especially cruel because it often happens behind your back, leaving you unaware until it's too late. The narcissist might start small, making offhand comments to mutual friends, co-workers, or even family members. They may say things like, "I love them," but they can be really dramatic sometimes, or "They've been acting kind of unstable lately. I'm really worried about them." These seemingly innocent remarks plant doubt in people's minds, setting the stage for larger lies later. Over time, they escalate their efforts by twisting the truth, fabricating stories, or portraying themselves as the victim. If you've ever stood up to them or set boundaries, they rewrite the narrative to make you look controlling, unreasonable, or even abusive. They might claim, "I've done everything for them, but they just keep pushing me away," or "I don't know what's wrong with them lately. They're just so angry all the time." Sometimes they go further, saying, "They keep making up things about me. I think they have mental health issues." By the time you realize what's happening, people you once trusted are looking at you differently, avoiding you, or even confronting you based on the narcissist's lies. You might notice friends being distant, co-workers treating you unfairly, or family members acting cold. The worst part is that when you try to defend yourself, they accuse you of being paranoid or overly sensitive. They say things like, "I never said that," or "You're always looking for drama." This gaslighting makes you question yourself even more. deepening your sense of isolation. In work environments, social circles, and families, this tactic can be particularly devastating. A narcissistic boss might undermine your credibility to prevent you from advancing. A toxic friend might spread false rumors to keep you from forming closer bonds with others. A manipulative partner might make your own family doubt you, ensuring that if you try to leave, you have no one left to turn to. The emotional impact of this tactic is devastating. It can leave you feeling isolated, misunderstood, and betrayed by the very people you once trusted. You may start questioning yourself, wondering if maybe you really are the problem. This self-doubt is exactly what the narcissist wants, because the more unsure you are of yourself, the easier you are to control. The best way to protect yourself from a smear campaign is to stay grounded in your truth. If you notice people acting distant, resist the urge to chase their approval. Instead, recognize that anyone who believes lies about you without hearing your side was never truly on your side. Do not waste energy trying to prove yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Focus on maintaining strong connections with those who truly know and support you. Instead of defending yourself against every lie, let your consistent actions speak louder than their fabricated stories. Narcissists thrive on drama. The less you engage, the more their manipulations fall apart. Most importantly, never let someone else's false narrative define you. The truth always comes out eventually, and those who matter will see through the lies. The best revenge is living your life with integrity, refusing to play their game, and surrounding yourself with people who see you for who you truly are. Gossiping about you. Gossiping about you is a calculated manipulation tactic where a narcissist spreads lies, half-truths, or distorted stories to damage your credibility, reputation, and relationships. Unlike harmless gossip, which can be thoughtless but not necessarily malicious, this tactic is deliberate. The narcissist's goal is to control how others see you, making them doubt you, judge you, or distance themselves from you. By controlling the narrative, they ensure that you have less support, less influence, and more difficulty standing up to their manipulation. At first, you might not even realize it's happening. Narcissists rarely start with blatant attacks. Instead, they begin subtly, planting seeds of doubt about you in other people's minds. They might act as though they are concerned about you, saying things like, "I really worry about them sometimes. They've been acting a little unstable lately." Or they might disguise their gossip as frustration, casually mentioning to others, "You know, they can be really difficult to deal with sometimes." These statements don't seem outright cruel, but they shape how others perceive you, making them question your character before you've even had a chance to defend yourself. Over time, their gossip escalates. They might twist your words, exaggerate your reactions, or completely fabricate stories that make you look bad. If you had a minor disagreement, they might tell others, "They completely lost it on me. I don't know what's wrong with them lately." If you try to set a boundary, they might say, "They're so selfish. Everything has to be their way." By the time you realize what's happening, people in your social circle may have already formed negative opinions about you, even though you did nothing wrong. This tactic is particularly dangerous because it isolates you without you even knowing why. You may notice that people seem distant, uninterested, or cold toward you, but have no idea why. Even when you reach out, you may sense hesitation, as if people have already heard a version of you that doesn't match reality. When you try to confront the narcissist about it, they deny everything, acting shocked that you would even suspect them. They might say, "Why would I ever talk about you? I would never do that." Even worse, they may twist the situation, making it seem like you're the one who's paranoid or overly sensitive. The most damaging part of gossip is that it steals your voice. People form opinions about you based on the narcissist's words before you ever have a chance to explain your side. If you try to defend yourself, it only makes you look guilty, as the narcissist has already painted you as dramatic or untrustworthy. This can be incredibly frustrating, making you feel trapped and unheard. The best way to counter this manipulation is to stop chasing other people's approval. If someone is willing to believe lies about you without ever asking for your side of the story, they were never truly on your side to begin with. Instead of wasting energy trying to correct every false rumor, focus on your actions. Let your consistency, integrity, and character speak for itself. The truth always reveals itself in time, and those who genuinely care about you will see through the narcissist's attempts to distort your reputation. Disregarding your needs. Disregarding your needs is a core trait of narcissistic manipulation, where they ignore, dismiss, or minimize what you need emotionally, physically, or mentally, while expecting you to give them your full attention and care. The relationship is entirely one-sided. Your needs don't matter, but theirs are treated as urgent and non-negotiable. This tactic is designed to make you feel insignificant, undervalued, and emotionally drained while they maintain complete control over the dynamic. At first, it may seem like simple selfishness. You may notice that every conversation revolves around them, every issue is about their struggles, and every decision benefits them. If you try to express your needs, they either brush them off, change the subject, or act annoyed that you're making things about yourself. Over time, this behavior becomes a pattern, not an accident. If you need emotional support, they are nowhere to be found. But the moment they need comfort, they demand your full attention, acting as if their problems are the most important thing in the world. If you're going through a tough time, they might say something dismissive like, "You'll be fine, I've been through worse." But when they have even a minor inconvenience, they expect you to drop everything and cater to them. This imbalance slowly conditions you to neglect your own well-being in favor of keeping them satisfied. In relationships, this can look like constantly adjusting your schedule to fit theirs, taking on more responsibilities while they contribute nothing, or feeling like your emotions are always secondary to theirs. You may find yourself apologizing for having needs, suppressing your emotions to keep the peace, or feeling guilty for even asking for basic respect. If you ever push back, they make you feel like you're being unreasonable, saying things like, "You're always so needy," or "Why do you have to make such a big deal out of everything?" In friendships and workplaces, narcissists use this tactic to keep the focus entirely on themselves. A toxic friend may only reach out when they need something, but disappear when you need support. A manipulative boss may expect you to stay late, take on extra work, and sacrifice your time, yet they refuse to acknowledge your effort or give you credit. No matter the situation, your needs are invisible, while theirs are treated as top priority. The long-term effect of this manipulation is that you start to internalize the belief that your needs don't matter. You may find yourself constantly prioritizing others, putting yourself last, or feeling guilty whenever you take time for yourself. This can lead to burnout, resentment, and a loss of self-worth, as you begin to see yourself only in terms of how much you can provide for others. The best way to break free from this dynamic is to start honoring your own needs, even when they try to make you feel guilty for doing so. Recognize that self-care is not selfish. It is necessary. If someone refuses to respect your needs but expects you to always meet theirs, they are not interested in a healthy relationship. They are only interested in using you. The strongest response is to stop over-explaining, stop justifying your needs, and start enforcing boundaries. People who genuinely care about you will respect your well-being, not see it as an inconvenience. False ultimatums. False ultimatums are a manipulative tactic where a narcissist threatens to leave, hurt themselves, or take drastic action if you don't comply with their demands, unlike genuine boundary setting, where someone expresses their needs in a healthy way. False ultimatums are used as a form of emotional blackmail, forcing you into submission by making you feel responsible for their extreme reaction. The goal is to create a sense of fear, urgency, and guilt so that you feel you have no choice but to give in to their demands. At first, these ultimatums may seem like intense emotional expressions. A narcissistic partner may say, "If you break up with me, I'll have nothing left to live for." A manipulative friend might say, "If you don't do this for me, I'll know I can't trust you." A toxic boss may threaten, "If you don't take on this project, you're not a team player and won't last here much longer." These statements are designed to create an artificial sense of crisis, making you feel trapped. The underlying message in false ultimatums is simple. You are responsible for their well-being, their emotions, and their actions. If you try to set a boundary, they twist it into a life or death situation, ensuring that you feel too guilty to follow through. If they threaten to leave, they make it sound like your fault, saying things like, "If you loved me, you wouldn't do this to me." If they threaten self-harm, they place the burden on you, implying that if something happens to them, it will be because of your choices. One of the most damaging aspects of false ultimatums is that they strip away your sense of personal freedom. Instead of being able to make decisions based on what is best for you, you are forced to act based on fear of what they might do. Over time, this creates deep emotional exhaustion as you begin to feel like you are constantly walking on eggshells, making choices just to prevent them from exploding or spiraling. The reality is that someone who truly values you will not resort to threats to get what they want. If someone constantly issues ultimatums, it's not about love or respect. It's about control. The best way to handle this manipulation is to refuse to engage in the emotional blackmail. If they threaten to leave, let them. If they threaten self-harm, encourage them to seek professional help, but do not take responsibility for their mental health. A person who truly wants to change will take ownership of their own emotions rather than using them as a weapon against you. Setting you up to fail. Setting you up to fail is a particularly cruel manipulation tactic where a narcissist gives you impossible tasks, unrealistic expectations, or conflicting instructions, only to turn around and blame you when you can't succeed. The goal is to keep you constantly feeling inadequate, frustrated, and dependent on them for validation. No matter how hard you try, they will always find a way to criticize you, ensuring that you never feel competent or secure. At first, they may pretend they are simply challenging you to be better. A manipulative boss might give you an overwhelming workload with impossible deadlines, then act disappointed when you can't meet them, saying things like, "I really thought you could handle this. I guess I was wrong." A narcissistic partner may set unrealistic relationship expectations, demanding that you be available 24/7, never make mistakes, and meet their every need without ever asking for anything in return. The moment you express exhaustion or frustration, they turn it against you, claiming, "I don't ask for much, but you always let me down." This tactic works by keeping you in a perpetual state of self-doubt. When someone constantly sets you up for failure, you start to believe that you really are incompetent, unworthy, or not good enough. Over time, you may stop questioning the unfair expectations and instead start blaming yourself, thinking, "Maybe I really am the problem." This creates a toxic cycle where you keep trying harder, but they keep moving the goalposts, ensuring that you never truly succeed. In relationships, this manipulation may appear in double standards and impossible to meet demands. A narcissistic partner may say they want honesty, but the moment you tell the truth, they punish you for it. They may insist they want someone independent, but when you start doing things on your own, they accuse you of neglecting them. No matter what you do, they will find a reason to criticize, ensuring that you never feel secure in the relationship. In workplaces, this can be seen in sabotaging your professional success. A toxic boss or colleague may withhold critical information, give you tasks without proper guidance, or expect you to succeed under circumstances designed to make you fail. When you inevitably struggle, they use it as proof that you are incompetent or unworthy of advancement. This tactic ensures that they maintain control, as you are constantly too busy scrambling to meet impossible expectations to ever challenge their authority. The long-term damage of being set up to fail is deep insecurity, anxiety, and a loss of confidence. When every effort is met with criticism or moving goalposts, you may start feeling powerless, believing that no matter what you do, you will never be good enough. This is exactly what the narcissist wants, because a person who doubts themselves is easier to manipulate. The best way to counter this tactic is to recognize when the expectations being placed on you are unreasonable. If someone constantly makes you feel like you are failing despite giving your best effort, step back and ask yourself, are the rules fair? Are the expectations realistic? If not, then the problem is not your effort. It is the manipulation itself. Instead of internalizing the blame, refuse to engage in their impossible game. A person who truly values you will set clear, realistic, and fair expectations, without using your failures as a way to control you.